Good evening, model railroaders, and welcome back to the Second Section podcast, where it's just a bunch of guys talking about model railroading. Sorry for the delayed start this evening. I didn't get the glad hands hooked up. Mike made me go check the air twice, and we didn't get the caboose hooked up right. So blame that one on the conductor. I'm your host, Andy Dorsch, and we got a fantastic show lined up this evening. But before we get to our guests, Mike, my co-host, how are you doing this evening?
I'm doing good. How are you doing?
Hey, I'm upright and taking nourishment. And we have two, I guess you could say, masters of the craft in the house tonight.
Icons. Here
to talk about scenery with us, and how to essentially master the craft of scenery on your model railroad. We have Thomas Klimoski and Tom Johnson. Tom, welcome.
Yeah.
Here's the man over there.
Yes. Welcome to the show. And thank you for taking the time to share some of your tips and tricks with us tonight. But we got over 100 people in the chat tonight.
Already.
And so there may be some people that don't recognize you or know who you guys are. So Tom, let's do a little bit of intro here. So Tom Johnson, would you give the fans here on the Second Section a little bit of an intro to yourself? What's your model railroading interests, the scale that you're in, and publications and stuff like that you've penned for over the years?
Okay, well, first of all, notice I'm the only one without headphones. I didn't want to mess up my hair, you know.
It was part of his contract.
You know, I was going to wear a scarf and I was going to wear the cape and all that stuff with Tom Klimoski, but I was Tom Johnson, and my scale has always been pretty much HO.
Okay.
I tried a little bit of N scale at one time, and I like N scale. I don't have anything against it for all of those N scalers out there. I think it's a cool scale, and you could do some neat things with it. You know, I started out with the American Flyer train set back in the early '60s, and then you know I got a Lionel train set. Had an uncle that was into trains, and he had a huge American Flyer collection. He used to set it up in a spare bedroom in my grandpa and grandma's house for all of us, all of the nieces and nephews and everything. And he kind of helped me get interested in trains. And plus I grew up about a half a block away from the nickel plate. So, you know, how good is that? I mean, yeah, geez, the nickel plate. And I used to hang out at the shanty there where the watchman was. And, you know, so I got to know trains pretty much. And then as I got older, you know, I sold my trains and got the stereo unit for my dorm in college and did all that stuff and got back into it after we got married. And again, you know, HO, and I built a layout in 1985, and that was in Craftsman, Railroad Model Craftsman magazine. And I kind of tore that one down and built a new one. And that was the one that I think most people probably remember, the Logan Sport Indiana Northern.
Yes.
That was in 2008, Great Model Railroads. And I've had bits and pieces in other magazines like Blending Roads into Backdrop and just other, you know, little short articles. Lots of my photos have been used in a lot of magazines, including Tom Klimoski's book over here.
Yeah, right.
And awesome book. And I had a few photos in that, plus Tony Custer's used a few. And most recently, another new article in Railroad Model Craftsman on my new smaller layout here in Florida. I've been published in a magazine in Europe, a German-speaking magazine called Loci America. And so those are some of the publications, I guess. I modeled a fictitious short-line railroad called the Cass County. It used to, there you go. That's the Craftsman article. Yes.
Yeah, the Craftsman article here.
Yeah. It's kind of neat looking at the 85 issue versus the 22 issue, and huge differences in quality of the photos. And I mean, even the scenery, that was back in the days where I was still using all the ground foams and things like that.
Yeah, right.
Where now I use a lot of static grasses and things. So, and I was a art teacher for 35 years. So the art background helps out a lot. So I approach the hobby more from an artist standpoint than maybe from trains itself. I consider the art, the layout, the main stage, and the trains are kind of secondary for me, where I know a lot of modelers, it's the other way around, and that's okay too. My background is art, so I kind of take advantage of it, and that's where I approach it.
So it'll be interesting as we go into the details of your presentation this evening to see the fundamentals of your art background kind of be on full display. So no, that's fantastic, and I have to say the Logansport in Indiana was how I first come to know you, I guess, so to speak, and it was an amazing railroad, and now the Cass County. So very, very, very impressive series of model railroad layouts.
Well, that's the one that the Logansport and Indiana Northern is the one that sold me on the less is more shelf layout idea. And I, to this day, I will never build a layout any other way. It's just, it's just for me, myself personally, it was the catalyst of where I got to be today with my modeling and stuff like that. So thank you for doing that and ruining my life at the same time.
I've always been a fan of narrow shelf layouts. I would like to say I was one of the few founders of it way back when, but I believe it or not, my inspiration came from a model railroad in Craftsman called the Lenawee County.
Wow.
And the Lenawee Central, I should say. Leffler, I think was his last name. Can't remember the guy's name now. Tom Leffler or something like that. But that was one of the inspirations. Then another one was Bill Darnaby's Maumee Road or Maumee Road.
Oh, yeah.
Maumee. Yes.
That was a really cool layout.
And I know Tony told me that Bill has said many times that if he were to build his layout over again, he would even go narrower on his shelves. And he has 8-inch deep shelves right now on his layout, from what I understand. So there was a couple of influences there. And then, of course, what Lance Midheim does was another one.
Yeah.
And I saw Tom's layout, Tom Klimoski's layout, and his being in a bedroom. And that's what fired me up to build this one in this bedroom, because I was a little disappointed I didn't have the entire lower, portion of our house like I did in Indiana. And I started looking at pictures of Tom's Georgia Northeastern, and I thought, if he could build this in a spare bedroom and do this, then I certainly can do the same thing too.
Yeah.
So Tom was a huge influence, and thank you, Tom, for getting me to build this in this little room here in Florida, and be happy with it. It's easy to maintain. It is so simple. I don't have to track down any electrical issues because the wiring is so simple. Like the old commercial on TV used to say, it's so simple even a caveman could do it. I can clean the track in less than 5 minutes. I can vacuum it, keep it clean. But it takes an hour to an hour and 15 minutes or so to operate if you operate the entire railroad, or only a half hour if you do only half of it. So at my age of 71 here in Florida, we've got a lot of other things to do. And I don't want to be tied down with my layout for 3 hours or even 2 hours. So I can play around with it for an hour here and there. And, I'm completely satisfied, ready to move on.
Yeah, that's fantastic.
So
that's awesome introduction and kind of segues perfectly over to Tom Klimoski about the small room size layout. And Tom Klimoski, you're a third time. This is your third time on the show. I think second or third time on the show here with us. Why don't you give our viewers introduction of who you are and where you've been in the world of model railroading?
Well, we'll start off as I'm a retired firefighter from Miami, moved up here to the Georgia mountains, and this is, I guess, my third HO layout. I had a 4x8 layout back in Miami, and that one went away quickly and went to a shelf style layout, which was in my garage, which if you go on my website, you can see it's the CSX Hawks Ridge. That lasted several years until I had to move, tore it down, moved up here, and tried to decide what is it that I want to build and how much space do I have. And the wife said, you can have as much space as you want, except I need to have a bunch of other things in the basement. So the space that I had got really small really fast. And actually, the room that I'm in is not even really designed as a bedroom. It was designed as a closet. So there's no windows, which is good.
That's
and I made it a little bit bigger than what it was originally on the plan. So it's 9'2" by 10'6". And then I have an extension that goes into my work room. That's where my cassette is. And it's a lot of fun. I enjoy doing the layout. As you guys mentioned, I've got several articles in Model Roader, Great Model Roads, other stuff. But the biggest thing is the book, which is Building the Right Size Layout, published by Kalmbach. I was honored when they asked me to write a book, and I wrote it basically to answer questions that I had received through my website and through, friends and family and that kind of stuff. So that's kind of where the book came from. And with a lot of help from friends and a lot of people that and have seen on the show, they helped immensely. Without the help of like Tom Johnson and Scott and so many other people I can hardly even name. That's kind of where the book came from, and that's where I got all the help from them. And I have a website, which is basically my name, thomasklimosky.com. You can go on there, you can order the book, you can see my layout photos, you can see the prototype, and there's some how-tos and that kind of stuff. But that's pretty much it. That's about as much as I can say in a short period of time. How's that?
That was the quick down and dirty intro. But I think the interesting piece is that you have a fairly extensive YouTube channel as well, where you show operations of your layout, right? And then you have tips and techniques on there as well, correct?
Yes. Some of the videos, one of them, which we'll really kind of get into tonight, is how to model a tree-covered hill. And if you go on to my YouTube channel, you can find it on there. I'm shocked that video alone has received over 50,000 views.
It's a really good video.
It's my highest. Yeah, it's my highest viewed video, which is kind of surprising. I've also got one on how to do super trees and that kind of stuff. So you can just go onto my YouTube channel or go through my website, and it'll take you links to where you need to go.
There you go.
And there's Tom. Tom's got my book.
Yeah, there it is.
Yep, there it is.
Favorite books. I look at it a lot.
So I got so the Georgia Northeastern. That's when I first heard of it, I thought it was a fictitious railroad, but turns out it's prototype.
It's real.
It's real. It's a real deal.
It's a short line. Yep.
Short line.
It's a short line.
That's awesome. No, it's good to have you back on the show, Tom, and thanks for taking the time. And this is going to be a hootenanny tonight. Mike, did you have anything to cover before we tear into it here?
Only thing I want to say is that I am still extremely disappointed in Tom Klimoski that he has not extended his layout to include the hill track where they make the big drops, the switchbacks and everything. I'm still so disappointed that the switchback has not been done yet. And I'm sure we'll get into that at one point.
That sounds like
maybe
a great
not.
opportunity for a series of Fremo modules. That really
That's,
does.
it sounds
there you
perfect if you ask me. I mean, I just, it's something that needs to be done.
Yeah.
It's just,
Yeah.
That's
I mean,
that's all right. I have a friend that's modeling the Georgia Northeastern, but prior to the Georgia Northeastern takeover, so he's still modeling the same stretch of railroad. He has the switchbacks on his layout, and he lives in the Atlanta area. So
nice.
if I get the switch, I'll just go over to his house and operate on his. He's operating the line between the time period where the L&N had it, and it was the family line systems, and then the Georgia Northeastern took over. So there's a period of time in there where it's got a wide variety of power, and so he picked like a perfect year to model. So I'll work on his layout. He's a good friend of mine.
Yeah, when you showed those pictures that one time when you were on, and I just kind of fell in love with that switchback thing. I thought, you got to do this.
Yeah,
I don't have room.
Cool.
You don't have room. I don't have room. I'm like, you can make room.
Yeah, yes, you can. So that's awesome.
I just threw this wall over here and take over the wife's craft room. Sure.
Yeah, why not?
All right, we'll begin the negotiations after the show.
I have one more thing to bring up here.
Yeah, go ahead, Tom.
Tom has been on 3 times.
Yeah.
Will you guys do this thing like they do on Saturday Night Live, the 5 Timers Club, where
yes,
you all get neat sport jackets that, second section podcast on.
I think that's what we're going for right now. Is we'll do the 5 Timers Club, and we'll get the fancy smoking jackets, monogrammed with second section. I think that would be just fantastic. I thought about it when I mentioned that Tom was on the show. I think for the 3rd time now. So
I think what we need to have, instead of the fancy smoking jacket, we need to have like on what's it called, the show Holy Moly, that miniature putt thing where they have the miniature golf show that they have on ABC or something. They have the plaid, the plaid sport coat with the big plaid.
Yeah. Kind of. Bobby Knight used to wear that for coaching.
Plaid sport coat. That's what we need.
There you go. Good introduction all the way around. Thank you, Tom and Tom. Tonight we have over 120 people in the chat live in the show tonight. So I do want to extend a bit of thanks to all those that join. Rules for the chat tonight: just keep it about model railroading, keep it civil, and you'll notice now we do have some moderators in the chat this evening. So if you see a little blue wrench next to their name, they're moderators, even if they know it or not. So just remember, keep it PC. We don't want to have the moderators have to boot you out of the chat tonight. So anyways, if you do have questions, comments, funny little quips, put them into the chat. We'll get them up onto the screen there for our crack panel of scenery experts. And hopefully you guys will have a good time tonight. Heath, yes, you need to behave. So, but wait, you're a moderator, so I guess I don't know how this is going to work. All right.
Anyways, who's going to moderate the moderators?
I guess that's my job. I guess so. 123 people in the chat tonight. So we have David Winther here. David Winther is saying, "I wonder if I could mute Andy." Well, that'd probably be best for everyone. Paul Scott, August is here tonight. Do the mods get their own smoking jacket? You know what? We're going to do something for the mods. Wrenches, terrible for parade, relatable 100. Around the Layout podcast is here tonight. Chris Holschbach is here. Heath from Humanity Junction, Thomas Chris, Green Bay and Western Lines is here tonight. Daniel Banks, Tony Dixon, JC Clock is here. Let's see who else we have. Chris Bell, John 2618 is here. Trackside Mike, Dave Nitch, all here tonight. Russ Rockin' O Railroad is here. Mini Prince is here tonight. Derek Alexander. Let's see, Roger Moses, Ron Bockelman, Brandon is here tonight. Says Tom Klimoski. Must know you. Let's see here. Otter
Yes.
Creek and Rio Grande Twisted Rail Hobbies is here tonight.
Oh, Eric.
Timmy's miniature and weathering works is here. Hi all. Chris Adams is here. I think Happy Valley Hobbies, Ozark, Midland, and Southern Interaction Hobbies, Fox River Rail Fan, Colin King, and the list goes on and on and on. Welcome everybody to tonight's big show. Scott McPherson
here. Boomer's here.
Boomer's here. Touch
Ralph
of the brush. Touch of the brush is here. Welcome. Let's see here. Glenn Fricks and Tim Moran. All right. So almost 130 people in the chat. Thank you so much. And let's see here. Tonight we're going to talk about amazing scenery. And we have two people in the house that are going to help us achieve amazing scenery on our layouts, Tom and Tom. Tom Klimoski, you drew the long pole or the long straw, so you get to go first tonight. So if you want to take it away, and let's see if we can do some screen sharing and share with us some of your scenery techniques. So let's see here.
Well, the reason why I get to go, I went after Tom Johnson, and Mike made the comment that it was like the music act following Elvis. So I got to go first this time. So now I'm the opening act. So the main show will be on a little bit later. But what I'm going to talk about today is something that Tom doesn't have on his layout, which is kind of hard to believe, but he doesn't have any water. So I'm going to talk a little bit about how I modeled the water. There's a couple different types of water on my layout. One is the scene that you see here, which is under the bridge, and it's we'll say a relatively calm river. And when you start looking out at the prototype, this is a scene near where I live. And one of the things you notice is the color of the water. It's not blue. It's more of a green. I think Tony Custer calls it like a pea soup green or something like that. Mm-hmm. So when you get ready to do your water, you need to think of the colors. Look at what the area is that you're modeling, which is different for each part. You know, every part of the country is maybe a little bit different, and you can get a little more light reflection off the water and stuff. This is the original bridge scene that you saw in the previous slide. It's kind of rough looking, and that's to show you that it doesn't start off looking real good. What I did was I roughed this out when I was building the layout, and I put up a temporary bridge because I wanted to check the track, make sure everything was operating properly, and did a few operating sessions just to make sure everything was working out before I started getting real heavy into the scenery. A couple of notes here. With the water product that I use, there have been some reports of it interacting or reacting with the foam. If you notice here, I use the extruded foam. This is 2 inches of foam, and then it drops down. There's another section of foam here. If you pour the water directly onto the foam outgasses a little bit and can and does create bubbles underneath the water. And I believe that may also happen with other types of water products. So one of the things that you want to do is have a good solid base. The base that you're looking at here is 1/2-inch wood.
Like it's plywood?
Not even plywood, solid shelf type material that you buy at Home Depot, and they can come in 1x8s, 1x12s, 1 by whatever. So this is one
dimensional lumber then.
Yep. Dimensional lumber, but real wide. So I put that on there, and then I painted it, and you notice I painted everything an earth color brown. Yeah. So this is the beginning of the scenery. This is, you can see here, I've put the bridge abutments in, and I created the embankment here. So I painted the area here a nice green color. And then what I did was I took the earth color that I had here and worked it out into the water area a little bit and tried to blend the two so that it looks like you could see the shore or the bank tapering off down into the deeper parts. Now you can go a little bit more crazy with it if you want to and really, start working on the textures of the water. But on this particular section of water, it gets pretty deep very quickly from the shore. So I went with a pretty much a same color. So the water, go ahead, Andy.
So I got a question real quick. So what I'm looking at here is we're looking at the river scene. We're talking about painting basically the channel of the river, more of a dark color, correct?
That's correct. And I used a dark green. I mixed paint until I got a good color that I was happy with.
Yep.
And then I painted it. And then there's a real good story to this. This tells you that not everything goes right the first time. So I painted the river. I did everything. Everything was perfect. I poured the water, and I'll show you here in just a second what I used for the water product. So I poured the water. Everything looked great. I was great. Turn the lights off. Done. I'll come back 24 hours later and check and see how it works out. So I come back, and what had happened was a gnat had decided to land in the river dead center of the water. I guess it looked so real to the gnat that he wanted to get a drink. So he got stuck in the resin. So I tried to pick him out. I created a hole. It just kept getting worse and worse. And I was like, oh, no, this looks horrible. I said, well, I could put a canoe over it. Maybe that would help. But I'm like, no. I gotta redo it. So I had to sand it, clean it up again, paint the river bottom again, taper the edges in, go through the whole thing again, mix the water, poured it. And then this time I was a little smarter. I covered it with plastic wrap. I made like a little tent out of plastic wrap to keep any little bugs or anybody that wanted to go check it out. The other part of the story is I did the same thing at our club layout in Mineral Bluff, and I poured the water. Everything looked great. Came back the next day. A wasp had landed in the water and was stuck. That was impossible to pick out. So if you ever go to the Tri-State Model Railroaders there in Mineral Bluff, Georgia, and you go look at the river along where the Copper Hill area is, you'll see a little pile of rocks in the river. That's where the wasp was.
That's where
I couldn't pour it again. The key with this water product that I use. Let me stop sharing here and come back. I can
bring you back up.
Okay.
Here.
So what I'm using is Magic Water by Unreal Details. I don't know if you can see the Unreal Details Magic Water. Right. It's a 2-part epoxy, and you mix it. And a couple of key notes: if you use this product, follow the instructions. It's very important. It says mix it continuously for like 10 to 15 minutes.
Yeah.
Another club member was a little quick, we'll say, and he mixed it and he didn't continue to mix it, and he poured it. It never cured right. It was always sticky. So mix it again, keep mixing it, set a timer. Once it's done, you can't over mix it. So keep mixing it. And then you can pour. Now you can also tint this, but you have to use an oil-based paint. Don't use acrylic. You have to use oil-based. So just a little drop will make a big difference. And it's one of those that one drop looks good, 2 drops, whoops, I went too far. You can't take it back out. So
Roger Moses said, can you tint it? And
yes,
you can.
Yes, you can. So you might want to try, maybe do a little experiment and mix a small batch, put a drop in, see how it looks. The problem is you're going to have to figure out your ratios, because 1 or 2 drops makes a huge difference in the color that you're going to get out of this. So this is a product, and I've used it on our club layout. I've used it here at the house. The railroad's been up for 8 to 10 years now. No cracking, no shrinkage, no problems at all with the water. The water looks as good as the day that I poured it. And
Tom, I got a question. Mike, do you have a question?
Yeah, I do actually.
Okay, I'll let you go.
Okay. Where you're talking about tinting, that is it able, like, you know how sometimes if you get like through rapids and things of that nature, are you able to do, like, after you pour that, are you able to add some highlight tinting to it after the fact once you poured it, in order to like give the effect of like a frothing rapids or something like that?
I'll show you what I do. I have another stream that's moving water, and I'll show you how I did that, and I use it. So good question. I haven't gotten to that yet, and I'll show you how it works.
All right.
There's another product that I use. There's a couple other products that you could use. I've used a couple, 2, 3 of them, and each one has its advantages and disadvantages. But I begin the same, is that I pour the river using, or the stream using this product, and then I'll come back afterwards and add the rapids, add the waves, add the additional texture to show it as moving water. So let me go back here to the share screen here.
And while you're doing that, I do have a quick question. So you talked about using oil-based paint versus acrylic, right? For the tinting bit. Is that the same with the riverbed? Or did you use the acrylic?
River was done with acrylic. It was done with like paints.
Okay.
Yeah. So, and another thing that's going to happen when you go to pour the river, this thing will find any little leak that you have. So as a precaution, I put down towels underneath my layout, and I made all kinds of, I was like, if this thing leaks, I'm not having it leak onto my carpeted floor. And, I don't want to have to explain that to the wife why I have this big puddle of hardened resin on my brand new carpeting. So I put towels down. Since I did that, it didn't leak. But I know that if I had not done that, it would have been like a waterfall pouring out. So what I did was I used clear caulk to caulk between where the wood meets the backdrop, and also where the wood meets the fascia, so that I didn't have any gaps or anything like that. Now, one of the tips that they recommend that you can do is mix up a small batch, and you basically paint it on, and that becomes like a sealer coat, if you will. And that will help prevent, so you're not pouring like 1/8 of an inch, and all of a sudden you realize you got a leak, and now you're over there trying to plug the leak, and it's leaking out, and you're making a huge mess. We have some resin that's on the floor of our train club in Mineral Bluff because it leaked, and it's still there. I mean, this stuff is like steel. You just can't get it up. I mean, there's no way. So be very cautious with this, but take your time and make sure that you do like a real good sealing job around it. The other thing that will happen with this product is it will wick up into the scenery that's around it. So this actually may have been a little bit lighter when I poured it, and this will creep up a little bit. Now, if you paint it before, in other words, do that sealer coat, it will reduce some of that creep, if you will, where it starts to wick up into the scenery material. But you want to have everything finished, all your edges finished, so that when you pour it, you can see that through the clear, reflection of the water and stuff.
Okay. So when you talk about, so what did you do to I guess finish those edges out specifically? Because that's one of the big fears I've always had with pouring resin is the creep.
Yes. The banks were my standard scenery technique, which we'll talk about a little bit later, but I paint the base. I use, a lot of times I'll do the foam, and then I do plaster over it. I'll use either plaster cloth or just regular hydrocal or plaster, and like the rock casting that's there, and I'll embed that in and get it all covered with plaster. I paint it all in earth color, and then what I'll do is I'll take my Georgia clay soil, which I took dirt right out of my yard, dried it, screened it, and then white glue, sprinkled it on, let it dry, and then you see some little rocks and stuff in there. So I did all the scenery before I did the water, before I poured the water. And like I said, on this one, it darkened up the embankment a little bit, but I didn't think it looked that bad. Now, if you want to, after it's all dry and everything is perfectly dry, you can come back and touch it up a little bit. If you want to, lighten the color back up again, you can do another application of your shore material or whatever, whatever color that works for your shore. But I thought this looked pretty good. It looks pretty much like what the embankments look like around the streams here in North Georgia. You'll notice from the previous picture, there's a little more texture that I've added here, some weeds and kudzu or whatever, which is different scenery material. this is a different view of the same thing. Now I've got the backdrop in here where it's always difficult to blend the rivers into the backdrop. What I did was I went and took a photo, and this is the photo that I took from a bridge, and you notice it's got the red banks, and it's got a lot of trees and stuff, and in this case the river turns and goes in behind these trees over here. So this created a really nice backdrop for me. So I took this, sized it to the area where this meets the water. So I had to figure out what the size was on my layout. Let's say it was 8 inches. So I had to size the photo from here to be 8 inches so it would match up with the banks on the river. So here you can kind of see when you're looking low, the embankments here. See, it's a little lighter red color than what mine is here. I could come back and try to touch that up a little bit. This was put in after the water was cured. I did not want to put this up and then pour it because it will again wick up into the photo because it's just I just use cardstock. So it gives you, it's not perfect, but when you look at the scene where you normally look at it, this is a normal viewing angle. You see that the bridge kind of blocks where that transition is from the 3D to the photo backdrop. So you don't really notice it as much. The embankment, the bridge abutments are AIM products, and I had to fit those in, and this is a exact rail bridge. So and then here you can see a high angle shot, kind of where this ties in, and then I use trees to hide the where the backdrop kind of blends into the continuation of the backdrop, because that was a separate piece.
So this is fantastic. Can you go back one picture, Tom? Look, this scene looks really cool just with the bridge and the reflection, and then the reflection of the backdrop with the river as well. I think that's really cool how that all played out. Yep. That's pretty remarkable.
Also makes for some neat photos because I can position the train on the bridge and catch the reflection in the water. I've got a few shots like that. I just didn't put any up in this presentation, but it does make some neat shots. And if you see videos of my layout, this is probably one of the signature scenes because you see the train going across the bridge, and it gives a nice effect. It's also a transition from one part of the layout to the other. It's compressing a huge distance into a small space, but that's where this is. That's why it kind of breaks up. There's some scenery areas here, some negative space on each side of the river. So your eye is drawn to the bridge and the river. And then these are just some, generic forests areas here with nothing much really to see, just some trees. And that helps blend in the backdrop here. I should have done a little bit better job of cutting in. The line here is a little harsh. I should have taken a little more time and tried to cut this in a little bit better so it didn't have such a hard edge. But it's not too bad. Yeah. Again, you're not staring at the backdrop. You're usually watching the train go across the bridge. So there's nothing that is distracting. All right. This is what you're talking about, Mike. You want to see stream with some movement in it. This is again, another, again, I live in a beautiful part of the country. If you haven't been to North Georgia, you got to come here at least once and check this area out. But this is one of the streams. This is actually in a little park in the county next to me. So this is my stream area. This is what it started out as. It looks pretty rough. This was just a bridge I just kind of threw in place to kind of see how it looked. I'm a very visual person, so I wanted to kind of get a visual as to see how it worked. Again, the foam, rough foam, and then plaster ended up going over that. And then here, we'll zoom in a little bit. You can see I've kind of roughed in the stream. There's no trees on it, but I've got the scenery, starting some of the scenery, and I've poured the river already. So what you're looking at here is the stream.
Yeah, I know, right?
Yeah.
And it's got a little bit of movement in it and stuff. And I'll show you here in just a second. We'll go here. This is the photo backdrop that I used. It's 2 pictures combined together, courtesy of my daughter who knows how to work Photoshop really well. And this is 2 photos. This is a stream that I took in the local area, and this is a photo of another, section of trees. Yes. And she blended the 2 together and then kind of blurred it and made it like a tunnel. So then when you put that up, that's what you get. It kind of just disappears into that black tunnel. Oh. And again, the bridge kind of blocks that transition from where the river goes into the backdrop. and you put trees on each side and everything. So here's
Scheme.
what you're talking about, Mike. Okay,
Yeah.
so there's what I did here. All these rocks that you see here, I gathered from a stream that's located near my house, strained them out and screened them, and only picked out the little tiny rocks, and I glued them in place as the river bottom. So those were all glued in place before I poured any water. Got everything ready, and then I poured the magic water into the stream and let it cure. This one I did kind of go back and lightened up the embankment after, because it did creep again up into the embankment, and it creeped a little bit onto the rocks. I didn't think it was too bad. And then to get the texture of the water, I used Mod Podge gloss.
There you go.
So this just stippled it on, and it gives you that, and it looks horrible when you put it on there. It's like, oh, this looks terrible.
Can you show us that again, Tom? The Mod Podge? I put you up on the full.
Okay, there you go. Yeah, I'm seeing my presentation, so I can't see you guys. That looking out okay?
Yeah, that's perfect.
Okay, it says it's gloss, Mod Podge gloss. You can buy it at your local, big box stores. I got this at Walmart or whatever. It's a couple of bucks. It's pretty cheap, and this will do more than enough.
Okay, so like this picture that you have up right there.
Mm-hmm.
Now, when you went, you painted the base, whatever color you did, and then you just put those rocks over the top of that painted base.
Correct.
And then, now, did you go back over and like highlight some of the pieces of stone, or is that just pure stone texture and color? That's
just pure stone. It looks like rock because it is rock. It's the real rocks that I harvested out of the creek that's near my house. So I've got some more. I was able to get a fair amount, and it was just kind of picking through the stuff. But it's kind of the same technique. I went and I painted the bottom green. Then I put the rocks over it. So that way if there was a spot where the rocks are missing, you get that dark green showing through. So it looks like it's a little deeper area of the river. And that's, what I looked at when I was looking at the local streams. I was like, the shallow streams, you don't see the green as much. You see the rocks, which are only maybe under a couple, 2, 3, 6 inches of water, depending on the thickness. This pour here is probably maybe 1/8 of an inch of the resin.
Wow.
My pores are very thin. I don't have to pour them very deep. The one that you saw previously on the other river with the bridge there, the first pour was maybe about 1/8 of an inch, and thank goodness I had about 1/8 of an inch before my fascia. It almost overflowed my fascia with the second pour. It was right up to the edge. I mean, I'm talking. It couldn't. I was watching the drip start to creep over. I was like, I can't pour anymore, but it worked out just right. So this one here's got a little bit more of a lip. It's got a lot more texture, and then also, what I did was I came in and I dry brushed a little bit of white just to get a little bit of the white caps as the stream comes around the rocks. You get a little bit of the white, white caps in here, the foaminess, and it depends on how fast the stream is flowing. You can see a little bit of it here, just a hint of the white, and it get very, very light. You can always go back and add more. It's hard to take it out if you put too much.
That's fantastic.
Any more questions on the stream before I move on to the next section?
So the river pour, so not the stream pour, but the river pour, how deep was that? About 1/8 of an inch as well? Because I think Mini Prince asked that question very early on.
about 1/8 of an inch. Each one was about 1/8, maybe even a little less than that. It was not very thick.
Wow, that's amazing that you get that much depth with such a little profile of resin.
Mm-hmm.
It's unbelievable.
Hey, Tom, you mentioned about the material that you use for your water kind of soaking up into the scenery on the edges.
Mm-hmm.
Now, on my old layout, my Low Good Sport Indiana Northern, I did have a stream on that layout, and I used 2-part epoxy like you did. And what I did is I just used my oil paints and I dry brushed.
Oh, there you go.
Scenery right down to the edge of the water. And I was noticing you talked about your Georgia red clay in that backdrop and blending in with your scenery. That would be another place I would just dry brush some. I don't know. I would probably mix burnt sienna with white, or maybe a little orange or something, and scrub most of that out in a rag, and just go back there and just lightly, ever so lightly, start highlighting that area until you get a pretty good match to your backdrop. And that's how I kind of blend my backdrops in. I think the secret is just painting. I paint the scenery right up against my backdrop, and I try to match the colors in the backdrop to blend the two together. Your backdrops are amazing. I mean, this water, the backdrops are amazing. But for people that were wondering about, that wetness soaking up along the edge, oil paints would take care of that easily.
Yeah.
So
go ahead.
I think Ralph Renzetti had a quick question here. It says, Tom, how are you stopping the resin from going over the edge? And I know you said that a little earlier on, but how did you stop it on this one?
Yeah, my fascia, when I cut the fascia for the depressed area where the stream is, I left about 1/4 of an inch, knowing that I was going to pour the river, so that I accounted for that depthness of the depth of the resin. So that, and then what I did was, on the back side of that, I painted the back of the fascia. I also used caulk, clear caulk, and sealed everything up so it wouldn't leak out between the foam and the fascia board.
Yeah, sealing it is key, right? You don't want that stuff to run amok.
Right.
No.
So you almost have to create like a box, right?
Correct. And
without making it an actual box.
Yes. But you definitely want to seal it all up before you pour it, and kind of check it. And some guys say, you could pour some water in there or something and see if it leaks out. I didn't go to that extreme. I just was really careful and made sure that the caulk was completely sealed all the way around, and kind of just, took a little bit of a risk, but I kind of put a little bit of the resin on there, and then as I was pouring, I was just
Here we go.
hoping and praying that everything didn't have a massive failure. I've heard of some horror stories where all the resin ends up on the floor. So that's not good.
That gives me the chills.
Yeah. So we'll keep moving along here, because I want to leave a lot of time for Tom, Mr. Elvis, to the king of scenery, to do his presentation, because we got a lot here. One of the things when you're looking at your layout, okay, I've got all this track, I got it all down, everything looks good, I'm ready to go. Where do I start? Where do you start your scenery? Well, of course, the answer is at the beginning, but you want to get you want to get the biggest bang for your buck, and one of the quickest areas that you can do is a yard scene, because there's not a whole lot to it. Yeah, I mean, you can cover a large area pretty quickly. Now, you still got to do the ballast, and that takes time and all this stuff. But doing all the structures and doing all the other scenery, I mean, that takes a lot of time. So I started in the yard area, and what I did was just kind of remember this picture, because a little bit later we'll come back to it. I did all the ballast and got that all in, and that looked pretty good. And I started doing the rough scenery on the back, and I wanted to have like a little rock cut. And this is built up using extruded foam. And then I put plaster cloth over the top of it, so you can kind of see a little bit of the texture of the plaster cloth. Sure. And then I painted the rocks, and I wanted to get a nice color there. And there's actually a little bit of green in there. If you go look at the rocks, there's a little bit of that mossy green. So you want to kind of dry brush that in. Tom Johnson can cover that a lot better than what I did. I'm not as talented as he is, but it came out okay. So now you can see the scenery starting to come into play here. And what I use is Hiki wild fiber grass. And I don't know if you're going to put me up on the big screen there, but I'll show you this. This is the product that I use. It's Hiki 1575 and 1576. This one is 1576 pasture green wild grass. And it's 6 millimeter static grass. It comes on a little grass mat. And then what you do is you take this out. I'm going to drop a lot of stuff here. But
is that from Scenic Express, or where'd you get that?
Yes, you can get it from Scenic Express, and it comes as a little mat. And you go, wow, that's not going to go very far. Well, what you do is you tease this and you pull it apart, and then you glue it down. And you don't need a static applicator. You don't have to spend the money on a static grass applicator. If you don't have that large of a layout, why are you going to spend big money on a static grass applicator? Unless the best one is you can borrow one from somebody else that has one, but I didn't want to do that, so I went and got this, and it works out really well. And that's where you can go back and watch that video that I told you about, which is on my YouTube channel, which is how to build a tree covered hill, or you can go to it from my through my website. And that will show the technique that I use to put this grass mat down. And now
really
I'm leaving
cool.
it. I'm leaving it all over my pants here. So you don't waste any of these fibers. What you do is you pick them up, and then you can use them to kind of fill in spots that you have.
Yeah.
And then I use some other scenery material. There's some other like kind of weedy stuff here. And again, a lot of this stuff I can't pronounce because it's, from Germany, and this is floor light green. It's NR1550. That's the number there, and it's kind of like a little mesh, and you stretch it out, and that's how you get these little weedy areas that you see over here. And then for the area that's under the trees, I use the flock and turf, which is a lot more economical than using static grass. So you've got this kind of stuff which is underneath the trees, because the grass doesn't really grow under trees very well. It's mostly just kind of deadfall and stuff like that. So you put that down, and then you can come back and you add your trees. And these are super trees. And you can kind of see it starting to take shape here. Notice here I left some of that red clay embankment, which is really really common around here. You can see where the grass has fallen off because it's too steep to hold, and so I wanted to create a few of those areas. And then this is an angle again, some more texture here, a little bit different leaf. You'll notice a light green, a darker green, a little different color leaf texture on the trees, so that they're not all exactly the same. I use some different leaf, you can buy it in packs here. It comes in a lot of different colors.
Hang on, Tom.
The light green. Oh, sorry about that.
No, that was me. That's your production guy. He's laid on the stick.
Tom, you're going to save me a lot of time because you use all the same things I use, so I could just reference you when I go through mine.
Okay. Well, I must be doing it right if Tom's using the same stuff I'm using. So you can see here we're building up lots of texture, lots of different colors and shapes, and it's not all the same grass. It's the little bits of other types of scenery material. I mean, just go through that Woodland Scenics or Scenery Express catalog and look at all the different options that they have. They've got so much stuff out there, and I'll show you some other stuff here in a minute. So what I want to talk about here is you see some of that kind of viney looking stuff that's just stretched out and just stuck on. I didn't glue it in. And then if you look back here, there's like a little bit of a view block here on the top of the ridge, and what that is this right here. I don't know if you want to put me up on the big screen again.
You on the big screen there.
And this is kind of from Lance Menheim. He talks about using Merlin, and you have to go to an auto parts store, and it comes in a big roll and stuff. And I'm like, we don't have any of those around here. So what I found was
Scotch-Brite
heavy duty pads. You can find those anywhere. And what you do is you just take them out, cut them into a rough shape or whatever you want. And then I spray painted them kind of brown, and then just sprinkled the ground foam over them. So there's the back side, and then there's the front side. So that just kind of creates that denseness. So it kind of hides that seam again between where the backdrop ends and the scenery begins. So you want to find a way to kind of hide that transition there. And it just looks like dense underbrush and stuff. The distance from here to the backdrop is about 4 inches.
Unbelievable.
So it's not very deep, but I wanted to have about that much to have this little embankment and just enough to get a row of trees in there. And you can see the other thing is when you're doing the scenery, you want to have smaller bushes towards the outside, and then the taller ones. Usually the smaller ones are on the outside of the forest line. And once you get deeper into the woods, you don't get as many small trees because they can't grow because they're not getting the sunlight like they do along the edges. The material that you see there on the edge here is, again, I'll go back to the big screen. Here's some of the stuff from Martin Welberg. This is some bushes. I mean, they've got some fantastic stuff. John 2618, John Farrington, turned me on to this. He was using some of that. I was like, oh man, that looks fantastic. What did you get? And he said, yeah, it went into the Martin Welberg catalog, and he got a bunch of stuff. So I started looking. Well, at the time he was modeling winter, so he was picking different colors than I was. But I just kind of found some light greens. The light greens are more common in the springtime. As your season changes, the light greens start turning a little bit darker. So that's something to look at if you're modeling. I'm modeling spring, end of spring, beginning of summer. So you're starting to get that light green is going away, and you're starting to get some of the darker greens, but some of the trees still have that light green look.
Yeah.
And again, look at the texture in this photo here. You've got your static grass, you've got that stretchy stuff that creates the weeds. You got more weeds here, a different type of weed material, some super trees, smaller ones kind of as bushes and stuff. I save all the little pieces of the super trees, bound them together with a piece of thread and put a little glue on them or hot glue, and then that becomes a bush. And you can use a lot of the super trees. I did a video.
Too small to use.
Yeah. So and again, the difference here is look at the colors of the trees. They're not all the same color. You want that variety and texture, and it looks realistic because it's got that variation of color. And again, this is a little bit of a negative space area that blocks your view of the industry. So it seems like it's a little bit deeper. You kind of don't see the cars behind the trees. I also put a little hill here to raise the trees up, because the super trees are pretty good, but they're not the height of a full real tree. I mean, if you look at real trees, Tom Johnson will talk about that in his presentation, but super trees are close, but not quite what a real tree would be. So it's not bad. Again, looking at the smaller bushes to the outside, some other texture in here. That's kind of the same area. A little bit of grass here, then it transitions into the track area. This was just showing some negative space. I mean, I donated or dedicated a lot of space to a parking lot and just an empty tree-filled lot, if you will, and some extra space. That negative space really helps set things off. You can really see the buildings better. Everybody starts squeezing things down. I want to get more in there. I want to put another building in. I want to do something. Well, you lose that realistic look, which if you go to any business now, you got parking. There's parking. You got to have places to park. I've seen model railroads. It's like there's 2 cars could park out in front of this shopping center. There's no road or no parking spots. So that's something to keep in mind as you're working on your layout. Now we're getting into the track a little bit, and Tom can talk a little bit more about that. But looking at the track right here, you can see this is kind of a secondary track or a yard track. It's got a bunch of leakage from some hopper cars. This one's a little bit more of a main line, and then again down here, this one's a little bit lower. It's a secondary siding. So now the guys can't answer the question because they already know the answer here. When you look at this picture, what is the code of track for the main line, and what is the code of the track for the siding? I'll give you. Oh, don't answer. Don't answer.
No, Tom, no.
Hey, teach,
right.
I know.
Let's play a little game here. So for those of you guys paying attention in the chat, so in the foreground, what do you think the gate or the code of the rail is? And then in the background, what do you think? So throw that in the chat and we'll get it up on screen. See if you're right. So we got relatable 170 and 55. Let's see here. Humanity Junction says same.
Okay.
83 and 70.
Okay.
Chris Holschbach says same 83.
All right. No winners yet. No winners yet. Come on, Heath.
70.
What was Heath said?
Heath says all code 70.
He's the winner. Winner, chicken dinner. It's all code 70. This was laid on foam. 70. This is all laid on foam, and this was laid on a cork road bed. This gives you a nice ballast profile here. Cleaned it up. This one here has got in-scale ballast covering the ties, and it makes the rails look lower, smaller. So it looks like 55, or if this was 83, this would look like 70. But it's all code 70.
So cool, old 455. I bet it's actually the same, but 83 and 55 is my other guess.
Yeah. So if you're really sharp, you know that this is microengineering track, and you could tell me that it's all 70 or something. But it's if you've read my layout information, it tells you all the track is code 70. So it's just how you present the track. So you in this case, the scenery comes up to it. The grass is between the rails. You got a little bit of ballast over the ties. What I do is I use in-scale ballast and cover the ties, so that if you go and you look at sidings, and we were out looking at one the other day, you didn't see the ties hardly at all. Maybe one every 10 feet was kind of poking through the ballast. So I kind of did the same thing here to give it that less used, less maintained look. So same thing here. This is the same, different siding, but the same idea. You know, a little bit of grass between it, some bushes or weeds along it, and I also use some of these mini nature little tufts, which you'll see here, like that's between the tracks. This is some little different weed material, and then this is some of the leftover of that static grass that I used, the wild fiber static grass.
So, question in from the chat, Tom. Relatable 100 asks, what kind of ballast are you using?
Arizona Rock and Mineral.
Arizona Rock and Mineral.
CSX, I think it's 136. It's a CSX Wabash blend. There's a couple of them that say CSX, but this is the one that I used. I think it's I'd have to look again, but it's a CSX, one of their blends, and it's got that nice little peppery, you know, a little bit of dark in there, and enough of it that looks like what they use here. Kind of the same thing. This is a yard area here that I showed you a little bit later, and again, you'll notice here this picture was taken before I did some work on the yard. This is what I did to the yard. I said it wasn't dirty enough. I looked at the prototype photos and I said I missed. There wasn't enough dirt. It was too light. It was too even on the color and texture. So I went back. A friend of mine, Brandon, gave me some dirt that he had acquired from a local area, and it's a concrete color. It's like a very, very dusty gray. And then I also had some Arizona Rock and Mineral dirt, and I mixed that all in, and I did another application of scenery material. So there's another lesson. Once you do scenery, you can go back and work on it some more. You don't have to just, oh, that's it, it's done, I can never do it. So I went back over it. I put glue down, put the stuff down, used the glue and water mix again, and added that extra texture over the top. And I think it really improved the look of the yard. It gave it that more modeled look that you see on the prototype. Yeah. And when you go and you look at the prototype photo, there's the photo. Look how much dark is in here, and this is more of a darker gray, and then you got some of the lighter over here. So that's what I was trying to replicate and get some of this. You know, this is the white is leaking marble chips from the hoppers that they go down in Marble Hill and get them. So this was taken before I added that texture. You can see here it was kind of light, all kind of the same. So since then, since I've taken this picture, I've gone back and added that extra texture. Yeah. So, and then, you know, we talked a little bit about scenery, making the rivers blend into the backdrop. This is a road blending into the backdrop. I kind of curved this off. This was done with styrene. The road is made from styrene and then painted with spray paint. Lance Menheim has a tutorial on his website where you can go in and see how he did the roads. I did very similar. The only difference is the white lines and the yellow lines are decals. Oh, so I decaled them just like you would, you know, I did it. Everything was done off the workbench, and I put the fun part was this is a slight curve. So I had to make little cuts in the stripe to be able to get it to bend around the curve. A little tedious, but it did work. So it works out. And then this was, you know, adjusted with some weathering powders and stuff to get a little bit of texture into the road, and drew in some cracks with a pencil very lightly. I don't like to overemphasize that black seal that they use on the road. Some people do. It can be done. It can look good. Sometimes it can be a little distracting. So you want to kind of tone that down. It's you see it, but only if you're looking for it, you know. And that's kind of the thing. You don't want something to jump out at you when you're looking at it. You want everything to kind of just focus on the trains and not be distracting. And that's the same thing with the backdrops. Try to get them to just blend in. And this was taken, as I mentioned before, this was taken actually on the grade crossing. And this is the road that I'm modeling, is the photo of the road there as it curves off.
That's the car coming at you.
Yeah, and that's the car coming at me. And that's a model. That's a model. That's a model. That's a model that's not on the photograph. But on one of them, I had, we'll finish up. This is one of the last ones. This is a photo that I took, and I was trying to find something where the road would kind of disappear over a little hill.
Oh, cool.
And I had an idea where I wanted to, and it was by a lumber yard, which is where the road was going to tie in, was next to my lumber yard. So I took the first picture. The first time I took it, I stood in the middle of the road very carefully, of course, didn't want to get run over. And I took it back, blew the picture up, put it up, and it was wrong. The perspective was all wrong because you view the scene from standing over more in this way. So this is the photo tied into the backdrop now, and you can kind of see how that photo blends in. Even then, there's a little bit of a kink to the line. So you got to find it kind of the right angle. It's not perfect. The car kind of hides that transition there a little bit, but it's not too bad on this side, and it kind of ties everything in. So that pretty much concludes my my presentation here. Let the king go. But we got to get Elvis.
I
need a break.
Things now I'm going to have a hard time living up to your program here.
That was really well done, Tom.
Yes, it was. And I'm glad that he showed a lot of those scenery materials because I don't have them anymore. I don't have the props. I used almost everything that I had on this layout, and then what was left over, I actually gave a lot of it away to some friends that were doing scenery and things. I didn't need it anymore, so why should I keep it around here? I only kept a minimum of stuff to, if I needed to patch up something somewhere or change a small detail, I've got enough stuff here to do that. But I pretty much got rid of everything.
Yeah.
So, and all the stuff that Tom was showing, I always tell people, they say, how do you do it? How do you do it? I say, you know what? Just get on Scenic Express and just go through that catalog and look around, because so much of what we do on our layouts come from that. I noticed from the chat on here that a lot of the people that are on tonight, they all use Martin Wellberg and Scenic Express, and I mean it's nothing really new, but composing it, and putting it together, I guess maybe is a problem for some people, but there's just so much available to us today. It's just. I think of back to 1985, and I compare it to today, and I think, oh my God! I mean, this is just night and day.
Yeah. So, Mike, you've had a run-in with the Scenic Express bug, didn't you? Kind of buy up all the super leaf that you could get your hands on?
I did. I have.
Let's share a story.
Well, okay, so. I needed to start. I wanted to buy, use the super trees, and so I thought, well, okay, I'll do that. And watching both of you, both Tom and Tom, both of your stuff, and then Boomer, and I'm like, okay, I just have to. There's no dipping the toe in. I'm diving it,
Yeah.
But I decided I wanted to do a time of the year up here in Wisconsin where we have. Like most places in the Midwest, you have a little transitional area right around the end of September, early October, where trees get colored streaks in them. They're still green, but then they're all green. But then you have like 1/4 of the tree might be the brightest orange you could ever see, and the rest of the tree hasn't transitioned to that yet.
Yeah.
And so that's kind of the undergrowth, is, you have a lot of dogwood or whatever it is where everything's just brilliantly red. And that up against these dark old green trees. And it's just kind of a neat time of the year. And that's kind of the time of the year I want to model so I can kind of do everything. So I went out and I bought all their colors. All the colors of super leaf. I got one bag of every of them and put them in containers.
And I think that's really important to highlight, that, nature is not a uniform color, right? I mean, you could have two oak trees, you could have two red oaks right next to each other, and they're going to have different shades of green and different shades of, if you're in the fall, the brown or the oranges. And there's been a couple of comments, in the chat about nature's not uniform, different textures, different colors, shading, and going back and forth. And I think Mr. Klimoski did a fantastic fantastic presentation on showcasing that. And it really looks tremendously realistic. And it's just, for me, it was a really good tutorial, and thank you, Tom, for doing that. And it was really good.
Hey, one more thing on what I was doing. I had a really big hurdle I had to try to get over, because way Scenic Express names some of their colors. Like one of their greens, I believe, is called sage. That we don't have sage up here.
Yeah.
But we do have things that look very, very similar in color to that.
Mm-hmm.
So just because you might live in Maine or in New England, don't think you're not going to be able to use that sage color someplace. Or, you may not have your oranges or something, like it might not be the right color orange or something. Lighting and shadows can help take care of some of that stuff, and so just, I found that was the biggest thing that I had to do, is kind of get over we don't have sage, but realizing that the colors are what's important, not the name.
Yeah. So,
and I'm sure Tom, you're going to get into that. I'm sure you will.
Yeah, a little bit. Yeah.
So,
talk about fall and
great job with the questions from the group, and I think that's it. We're going to just call it a day. We'll bring Tom. No, I'm just kidding.
Yeah.
But thanks. Let's keep it rolling. Some good questions, Tom. I'm gonna go ahead and bring up your photos, if I know how to do it now. Let's see here. I can do
for everyone out there, we got on a little bit late because my computer did not want to cooperate bringing up photos. I have a Mac, and it was just, we just could not get things to share. So I wound up sending my entire file to Andy, right? Yeah.
Andy. That's Andy. Who I'm going by today.
Let's call him that for today.
Yeah.
Greasy meat hand. Greasy meat hand.
Up on here. So, okay, I guess I get started. Can these be a little bit bigger? Without, we're going to kind of steal the edges a little bit now. That looks about the same size as what Tom was showing, I think. So
yeah, I think that should be all right.
All right. I'm going to talk about transitioning a layout, a finished layout. I started this layout about 4 years ago. We moved here in August. September, I started the bench work and had all of the bench work up by the end of September. Then I put the backdrop up a few days later. Got some paints from Home Depot and sort of painted my cloudy sky. I rolled the paints on to begin with, and then I did hand painting with oils after that. And I could talk about that a little bit later. Then I used masking tape to plan out my track plan on top of the bench work. I rolled on a kind of a muddy color of latex flat paint on top of that, removed the tape, and you could see the outline of where the track was going to go. Laid the track, got all that in, and then I started building my structures, and I built every one of my structures on top of a masonite base, a 1/8-inch masonite base, and the masonite stuck out about an inch or so from all four edges of the base of the structure. And that way I was able to do all of my scenery and all of the detail and things that I wanted on the building at the workbench. I'm sure a lot of you have experienced putting a building on your layout and then you're trying to do scenery around it. And it is really hard to manicure that scenery up against the base of the building and keeping everything looking neat and not sloppy, especially when you're trying to reach behind. So I put everything on masonite bases, and then after everything was done, then I started locating them in their location or their places on the layout by the track. And, I could tweak it a little bit, move them a little bit, do whatever. And then I just put some little drops of CA on the bottom of the masonite base to kind of hold them in place. And then I basically built all of my scenery up to that scenery around the base of the structure. That way, I don't have to mess with getting the edges of the scenery manicured nice and neat. On the layout, I did it at my workbench, which made it a lot easier. So here's a picture of the layout that was in Craftsman this year with everything green. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
And if you go to the next one, then you'll see there's the transition to fall.
Oh, wow.
Okay. Just to talk about a few things, you probably noticed that the windows on the second floor were boarded up in this photo compared to the last one. I added an air conditioner. The building was painted white, and some people ask, well, how do you weather the boards and everything? I do that with a small brush and just I use oil paint, just dry brush with oil paint, and I actually do the weathering board by board, and I'll just go across one board and go across the second one, the third one, and I kind of vary it so they're not all the same all the way down.
Wow.
Some areas I'll make them darker.
Oh my gosh.
On top of the flat roof on the right side of the building, you can see where the boards are stained a little bit darker there by the window. That's some of that moldy green, ugly stuff that you see on usually the north side of structures from a lot of rain where they don't get a lot of sunlight. I've got a lot of dead leaves on top of the roof. Another detail sometimes I think is missed. I've got the line coming down from the antenna. And when we talk about fall, notice the background trees, the clear in the background. That backdrop is by a trackside scenery, by the way. Joey Wright makes those. I just found some backdrops on his site that just fit perfectly for what I wanted.
Wow.
And I just went over the top of those trees with oil paint and just lightly dry brush color over the top of them. And that's where I got the fall colors versus the solid green. And I think it worked out really good because they kept the colors more subtle and not real bright, like they're just popping out at you like some people, I think they call them like popsicles or something like that.
Yeah.
You have to be careful with autumn colors. Now I know in real life they could be really bright, but sometimes those real bright colors just do not work on a model railroad, and you have to keep the colors a little more subtle. And I try to vary the colors quite a bit. You can see the one tree that has more reds, and the other ones are more of a golden brown. Some of my trees are still green. So when I changed to fall and I changed the trees, then I had to add all of the leaves on the ground. The leaves go under the trees that are probably that have the most color. Trees that are still mostly green will not have a lot of leaves underneath them. You'll have leaves along the edges of roads. Why? Because when cars go up and down the road, the car tends to blow along the edges. Leaves on top of roofs, little things like that. And then then we can talk about the era specific details. Like I'm modeling 1978. So I've got the older pop machines. I've got the older mailboxes, the 60s and 70s era gas pump, the ice machines. Everything here is pretty much 60s and 70s.
Wow.
And then, of course, you got the phone booth down there at the end. The box. Then we have details that talk about the time of year. I'm modeling mid-October. We're only about 2 weeks away from Halloween. So some of the details that you'll see around structures would be the pumpkins, the corn stalks, the hay bales, the baskets of apples that a local orchard might drop off at a mom and pop store like this.
Incredible.
And then, of course, the bicycles. I always remember bicycles in a bike rack by the grocery store where kids would go in and get a bottle of pop or buy some snacks or something.
Mm-hmm.
Well, that's kind of throwing a bunch of things out there in the first photo. So now as we progress through the next few photos, we could go a little faster.
That's just the first photo.
That was number one.
That was.
Now here's another view.
Buckle up, kids.
There's another view of the green. Okay, now we'll go to the next one and you'll see the color. And you could zoom in and probably see the pumpkins a little bit better because I want to talk about those. I'm going to give a shout out here to Bernard Helen of Mini Prints.
Yes.
Those pumpkins are Mini Prints.
Hashtag not sponsored.
Hashtag not sponsored. The crates and the apples are Mini Prints to begin with. Now, when I painted those pumpkins, I painted them black.
What?
I painted them black. And that's where the cutout of the eyes, nose, and mouth are so dark. And then being black like that, when I painted it with my orange color, I used an airbrush. I airbrushed at an angle where it allowed a little bit of that black to still show through to highlight the crevices or the cracks in the pumpkins all the way around, the detail.
Yes.
And then I painted the stems on top. And then I did a little bit of a oil paint dry brush around the stem and kind of tapering down a little bit to the sides with kind of a moss green color. And
producer.
Yeah, there you go. And just to add a little bit of highlight color on top of the pumpkins.
That's awesome.
The newspapers, back to those are actual real newspapers. The one machine has the Logan Sport Pharos newspaper. And the other one has the Rochester Sentinel, which are two towns nearby.
Oh my gosh.
That's not fair.
No, that's
Nope.
No, that's cheating. I'm sorry, that's cheating. Foul. Foul. I got to throw a flag. I got to throw the flag.
I think we need to go to the booth to review this one.
I found them on the internet and I just reduced them down to HL scale. And yeah, if you could zoom in, you could read the headlines on there pretty much.
So there is a question from the chat here. Tim Moran asks, how did you do the plywood filled windows in that store?
Okay, the plywood and the chipboard and the whiteboard on the 4 windows on the second floor, those were all found on Google Images. Really simple. If you go into Google Images, go into your search thing at the top and just randomly type in some words. Like, for example, I typed in 4x8 sheets of plywood, and then I clicked enter, and then I clicked images, and I got a lot of awesome images of 4x8 sheets of plywood that I was able to reduce down to what I call pretty close to HO scale. I can't tell you if they're exact because I'm a visual person and I don't measure a lot. I just go by what looks right. So I use Photoshop and I just reduced them down and to a size that I thought would look good. And I also sprayed them with a flat finish.
There you go.
And because I like using glossy paper, a good Epson glossy photo paper is heavier than a matte paper. And also when you glue things into openings on matte paper, sometimes the glue tends to soak through. And it can alter the color, whereas a glossy surface, it won't do that. So I flatten the surface by spraying dull coat, and then I do some dry brushing around the edges with oil paints. And you can see around the very outside edges of those boards and the windows, it's a little bit darker.
It is, yeah.
And that's because a lot of the rain and a lot of the moisture tends to gather around the very edges of those boards, and especially at the bottom.
Yep. It's a really good detail here where that
all the junk that's dripped down underneath the air conditioner.
Yep. It's not fair.
Also the blackbird crows, those are also mini prints.
Up here on the flat roof awning or the trim board there.
Yes, those are also mini prints.
Am I seeing this wrong on that Coca-Cola sign? Is there a white streak right down underneath where one of the birds is? Or am I seeing that wrong? You didn't actually model a bird pooping on the sign, did you?
No, I did not. That sign came from Google Images.
Oh, jeez.
So that's prototype bird poop.
That's
prototype. Yeah.
All I had to do with that sign is reduce it, and I did put some flat finish over the top of it to cut down the shine.
Yep.
And that's it. I mean,
wow.
I just, a lot of these signs, they're just ready to go.
Agree with you, Randy.
Yeah.
The pop machines are all made by layered photographs. I use about 4 photos to make one pop machine. I'll use the entire photo of the pop machine to start with, and then I'll take a second photo and maybe cut out that brown wooden area and the Coca-Cola, and I'll glue it down on top, and then I'll cut the door out, glue it on top, and then I'll actually take a third photo and just cut out the Coca-Cola sign and glue it on top. So I've got like 3 layers built up.
Wow.
And the vents on the bottom there, those are photo etch roof walks.
I was gonna say those look like something you see on a rail car.
Yeah.
All right. Good night, everybody. That's it.
Yeah. Yeah. I just looked around in my parts drawer and I said, okay, these will work. And the mailboxes are painted correctly for the time of year. During the 60s and 70s, they were blue and red. And there was also a few of them that were that army green color. And I've heard a lot of stories about those. Some of them said they were for special packages, the larger boxes, or for leftover, or for if the other one was too full. I'm not sure what the reason was for them, but we had one on the corner at the junior high where I worked, so I would see that thing every day going home.
Yeah, we always were. The rumor was that they were for packages. I think
that's it. Yeah.
So, but anyhow, this is fantastic.
Okay, well, we better get moving on here. So, it's getting late already. Okay, there's the again. A lot of what you see here. Well, if you look at that phone booth, you'll see the phone book hanging down from below the phone.
If he says that that's an actual phone book reduced to HO scale, I'm leaving right now.
Yeah.
See you later, Mike.
You can see it's actually part of it is white and part of it's yellow for yellow pages. The yellow part of it's behind that vertical window thing
Post.
And if you see up there where the handset, there's the cable there holding, attaching that to the phone. And the phone thingy on top, I had to make that from scratch because you can't find those anywhere.
No, yeah. Unbelievable.
So,
hey, look, railroad tracks.
Yeah. There's actually some railroad here, but I tell people a lot of my layout is a lot about nostalgia and a lot of different scenes. It's not always about the railroad itself, and I try to show all parts of it. So, okay, we can zoom back out on this, and next
lead me on here.
The next
holy cow.
Oh no! There you go. There's a train for you. Okay.
Yeah, there we go.
There you go. Okay, that's an Atlas GP7 that I detailed, weathered, and painted.
The perspective alone, right there in that scene, is amazing.
Yeah,
just amazing.
You got to remind everybody, this whole layout is 16 inches deep.
16 inches deep.
Yeah.
Wow. Unbelievable. Should I carry on to the next scene here?
That will be the colored version.
Okay. So inquiring minds want to know. So we're green in this picture, and we have fall colors in this picture. How did you achieve that? The trees look exactly the same.
Well, they are not. I replaced the trees. These
replaced the trees.
These are handmade trees from a company called MBR from Poland. Really? I found these in a hobby shop in Chicago that deals with European imports. The hobby shop's called Reynolds, and but they've been having problems getting these in stock. I got lucky and found a whole bunch of these on eBay. I don't
understand why.
Yeah, how was that?
I said I don't understand why.
Yeah. And I also ordered a bunch of them directly from a hobby shop in the Netherlands. And that actually worked out pretty good. I had them in 10 days. They were real good. But a lot of the trees, a lot of the green ones that I have, I had to go through and hand paint them. And that goes back to trees that are transitioning where the outside tips of the trees are color and the insides are still green. And trees also tend to change from the top down. And you'll see some of that as we go through.
All right.
You notice the leaves under the tree, along the edges of the road.
Look at that.
There's one other detail I plan on adding, but I'm not going to overdo this. I'm going to have a couple of burn leaf piles.
Oh, there you go. So this is really good. So like, I just want to call attention to one thing here real quick. So where the gas pumps are here and the bases for the posts, and it looks like where the wind would blow and the leaves would collect and catch. And it's really well done. It's unbelievable.
Yeah, I was just looking at the same thing, Andy.
Yeah. It's just this is truly fantastic.
I've had some people kind of, they would get on me a little bit and say, well, why aren't there any leaves in the middle of the road? Well, I've got a whole bunch of photos that I got off the internet. I mean, if you've ever seen a lot of the photos that of these railroads up in New England states that Carl, I believe, shares, and his last name was Karlowitz, and or something like that, and he's got a lot of these awesome photos of fall scenery and some neat shots down roads, and the leaves are all along the edges of the roads and underneath trees, and not one leaf is on the road, not one.
Yeah, right.
So I guess it depends on how much road traffic. I mean, if there wasn't a lot of cars driving up and down the road, you would probably have a few more leaves in the road. But I like doing it the way I'm doing it right now, instead of dealing with individual leaves that I'd have to put down like one by one.
Yeah, right.
So
amazing.
That's just that's just show the green. We can just quickly go to the next one, and you can see the color.
Oh, wow.
The tree at the left was added. It's a different tree, and again, the details, you can see the leaves on the ground, the pop machines that I made by hand, the signs that I made in Photoshop or got off of Google Images, the wooden cases. The wooden cases are from a company called Prizer, and it's from their kit that's called Beer Barrels and Bottles, I think. And they have those cases in there, and all I had to do is just cut off the little handles that were on them that were not correct. And I kind of filed them a little bit on all four sides to square them up. And then I found some Coke cases on Google Images and reduced them down to HO scale and glued the Coca-Cola images on the sides of those plastic castings. And then the black on the end is the end of the Coke case that I glued on. So it's the plastic armature, the plastic casting from Prizer, and then I glued the photos on all four sides. And yes, they're very tiny, so it's a little tedious, but you get there.
Oh my gosh! So just looking at this scene
for a scenic detail, that's incredible.
Well, that's one of the things that for a long time I always noticed was missing on some layouts. I mean, so some layouts that were 60s and 70s and early 80s, they would have these pop machines, but there were zero Coke cases laying around, and you got to have the Coke cases. They didn't disappear until about the mid 80s.
Yeah.
So
I'm modeling 1978, so I'm well within the area.
So there is a question, and I do want to draw attention to it. So David Winther asks, how long has Tom been modeling before this quote unquote 4 years ago layout happened? So, I mean, you didn't just wake up one day and said, I'm going to just model like this. How long have you been on this journey to achieve this type of skill?
I would have to say that it pretty much started with that 1985 layout. I messed around with odds and ends before that. I mean, I had the brass track and all that stuff, So I went through those stages, and it started with a 1985. And being an art teacher and an artist, I don't know. I was just had a little bit of a natural ability, I guess, to be able to just compose these scenes and put them together, and getting the colors right and everything. So it all started then, and I think it was because of my artistic background that got me started. I mean, I painted pictures, oil paintings, in watercolors, and I guess I could see a lot of my oil paintings in my modeling. I noticed that I think it was Jason Clockey or somebody made a comment about that looking like a painting.
Yeah. And Norman Rockwell.
Yeah. Yes. And I guess I always called it 3-dimensional art and putting things together in 3-dimensional form. So, it started around 1985, and it's just I just wanted to find a different way of creating other than painting. I haven't painted a picture since 1990.
Oh, really?
No.
So this is just another medium then?
Yes. Since 1990, about everything I've ever done creatively has been the model railroad.
This is fantastic.
So Tom, when you're out and about, like at scenes like this, is this all drawn from memory?
Yes.
Or do you go past something and say, I like that, I don't have a camera, blah blah blah? Do you ever like sketch something out and use like a sketch of something to kind of give you the overall layout of how something's done? Or
I just have this memory. My professor at Manchester College, where I went to school, he called me in his office one day and had a nice talk with me about different things he would like to see me improve on in terms of my training to be a teacher and all that. But one comment that he made to me, he says, I don't know a lot of artistic people that have this, but he says, you have a photographic memory. And he's right. I have a photographic memory. I can't explain why or how, but I could see something, from 20, 30 years ago and recall like I just saw it yesterday.
Wow.
I remember how all of the leaves would lay on the ground from where I grew up. I could remember what the trees looked like. I could remember the details. I could remember all of the pop machines and how many there were, what kind they were, where they were located. That's why a lot of times when somebody might question me on something on my layout, I always tell them, if it's on my layout, I saw it. It's that simple.
Yeah. It's fantastic. I don't know. I've been staring at this scene for probably 5 minutes now, and it's just, the more I look at it, the more detail I'm picking out of it. And it's unreal.
What is that on to the very far? Andy, take your cursor just to the left of the sign, but to the right of the first post on the overhang. Is that a stop and go light?
Yeah. That's a stop and go light for the scale.
Oh my God.
Yeah. That's one of those things, I talk about a photographic memory. That's one of the things I remember seeing at grain elevators.
Yep.
Keep off the scales until it's time. When the guys are ready for the next truck, then they'll turn that light from red to green, and the next truck will roll on.
Wow.
And some of the little like the power pole. Notice the little silver band.
Yes,
that's to keep the squirrels from getting up there into the lines and causing a major problem, especially on poles that have transformers or what do you call them, resistors or whatever they are. That was pretty much prominent up in Indiana. You could see those bands on a lot of poles up in Indiana. I don't see them at all down here in Florida. And they have squirrels down here, believe me. But that's something that I remembered. Another detail that I remember seeing.
So
The pole in front of my house in Indiana had one of those bands on it, so I had to get right in my front yard.
do you sketch the scene out and do a little bit of planning and kind of collect all of your memories onto paper first, or do you just?
That's kind of what I was. That's what I was kind of asking. That's
Yeah,
kind of how do you?
Yeah, well, I kind of look at the area and I kind of try to visualize what everything will look like and where it will go. And remember, I said I built all of my structures on masonite bases and got all of the detail done around them. So I was able to place the structures on the layout and put them in place. And then I was able to figure out, okay, this looks good here. We'll put this building across the street. This is going to make a neat little scene. I try to visualize taking photos and what that would look like. And then I start thinking, okay, now where can I put in a tree or two trees that would complement the scene? That would give the scene maybe that little bit of a cozy feeling or nostalgia feeling. I can remember when I was little, my hometown was just populated with trees. And it's like, stores, neighborhood grocery stores, different places we'd go in. There was always a bunch of trees and always a bunch of shade around the buildings from the sunlight. And it was just such a cool feeling.
Yeah.
And it's a shame that a lot of those places that I remember as a kid in my hometown up in Indiana, those trees are gone.
Ugh.
So.
Wow.
Question from the chat, Tom, about your roads. Looking at the road in front of us here, how do you do your roads?
Okay, my roads are made the same way as you do ballast. I went to Hobby Lobby and I found a bunch of fine sand. Okay, and it was about the size of N scale ballast that Tom talked about.
Yeah.
And I found some gray. It comes in gray, yellow, black, brown, tan, different colors. And the neat thing about that Hobby Lobby sand is it's all the same size. Whereas if you buy N scale ballast, it might have a variety of sizes, of stone or granules in the ballast. So I just simply tape the edges with masking tape to give me my width of my road. I sprinkled the sand down from about 10 inches above with a spoon, and I just kind of let it snow down. Yeah. And I just did that all the way back, and I applied more of it in the middle to give a crown to the road. Then when I was done with that, I sprayed the road with water and dish soap, like you do when you're doing ballast. I prefer the water and dish soap on this stuff versus using any alcohol. It was just faster, and I use a pump hairspray bottle to apply the water detergent, and then I added the glue and water, 50-50 Elmer's glue, water, and let it soak until it was almost a white color. And then after about an hour of setting up, I removed the tape from both edges. And I took my thumb and went down and tamped down the edges. And then I took a little tiny block of wood about the size of my thumb, maybe bigger, and I started tamping down the road. That was one of the articles in Model Railroader a little ways back that I did on how I made these roads. And I also covered it in my MRH blog on Model Railroad Hobbyist magazine.
Yeah.
I have a blog going there, Tom Johnson's Cass County Railroad, and I cover all of that in there. So you might want to take a look at that on how I did some of these things. And then I just tamped it down, and then and that smooths it down, so it's not real rough, but you still have a little bit of that texture there, like you get with the what do you call it? The chip and seal roads.
Yeah, chip seal roads.
Yeah. And then I painted it kind of a gray color, and then added the black lines with a really fine tip black marker. And then I did some weathering in between all of those black lines.
Whew.
using dry brushing again with oil paint.
Oil paints.
I highly recommend dry brushing with oil paints. It's amazing the effects you can get out of it, and it's easy.
Do you have a preferred brand of oil paints that you use?
Well, no, but I've started using the water-based brand now. Believe it or not,
okay.
What oil paints now come that will mix with water, and your brushes with water, so you don't have to deal with turpentine anymore or terpenoid, which is odorless turpentine. It's nice stuff, but it reacts the same way as oils. And oils will stay moist for a long period of time, and that's why they're so cool, because you could blend and blend and blend, and you could go back and blend some more. You don't like it, you can go back and blend some more. You can't do that with acrylics.
Dries too fast. Yeah.
They dry on you.
Yes.
So that's why I like oils for a lot of my weathering techniques and scenery blending techniques and so forth.
Yeah, that's outstanding.
Okay, we'll move on here. We'll just go ahead and look at this real fast and go to the next one, and then and a lot of the same things. You can see the band on the pole. You can see I do detail my power poles. I have I do have the fuse. You can see the fuse up there.
Yeah.
I have a line coming down from one of those insulators to the top of the fuse. You can't see it because it's a really fine fish line. There's a line that comes down from an insulator to the fuse, and then from the fuse down to the top of the transformer. And then I've got the 3 phase lines coming out of the transformer to the 3 insulators below. And then from there, that's where it goes to your building or your house. That part I did not model. I detailed the poles, and I decided the rest of it can be left to your imagination. I got the crows up there on the top there. There's 3 of them up there at the top.
And the high voltage?
High voltage, yes. And then at the bottom of the pole, if you scroll down, I don't know if you can see at the bottom of the pole. You can't see it. It's barely there. There's the number. All of the poles had vertical numbers of several digits.
I'll be darned.
Texaco sign that's with the Texaco sign missing. I saw that on a rail fan trip probably 30 years ago.
Look at this. Punched out the center of the Texaco sign there.
I've seen that around Wisconsin quite a bit.
Yeah, it's out there. Yep.
Unbelievable. This is fantastic. This is unbelievable. All right, let's back up here. Okay,
we'll just keep moving along here. Okay, that's just a close up. We go past that. Okay, there's this scene of the home base for the Cass County Power. Used an old transfer caboose. The next one is in color and zoomed out a little bit more so you can see more of the detail. See the oil tank that for the heating, the air conditioner that was punched in the side, the power meter. You could see the little hand pump for the water right there in front of the front truck of the engine there by the barrel.
Yep. Those are the little blue handle on it.
Yep. Yeah. If you look at it from the side, it kind of looks like you can see through it. The porta potties are 70s era porta potties, by the way. The barrels are those barrels, and the oil, the green one clear at the left here, those are all mini prints. Detailed.
Really?
Yes.
So the 55-gallon drums, and then it looks like that.
Yeah.
Fuel oil.
I wish you would have come out that a little bit sooner, because the fuel oil tank that's over here by the caboose, I scratch built that one. I just couldn't find anything anywhere. So you could see that the mini prints one is really good. Also, if you look on the caboose on the platform, you could see like a car jack there.
Right here.
Yeah.
On the platform.
That's mini prints.
Hashtag not sponsored on tonight's pod.
Not sponsors. Yeah. I know Bernard, you're out there.
Yeah.
I just love this stuff. I've kind of run out of adding details right now. I keep checking to see if he comes out with something new that I can plug in somewhere. So, and I have found things now and then.
This scene inspired me to rethink my engine facility and kind of redo my. When I saw this, I'm like, yeah, this makes a lot more sense.
Notice the kudzu, or whatever you call it, up the pole, but you can see the lines hanging down.
Right.
A lot of these small branch lines and short lines, the lines were cut down. And some of them were just left hanging there. They were sloppy. And then some of them were cleanly removed. And some of them were just kind of hanging down, dangling there. And I've got a couple of poles that look like that. That's a neat way of modeling poles where you don't have to wire them all up.
Yeah, right. So do you use like lead wire for your wires, or
real fine armature wire?
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, because that way then I was able to, bend it and curve it just right, whereas you couldn't do that with fishing line or thread. It would be too irregular coming down from the pole. And I did weather the pole up a little bit. It was all green for my summertime scene, but for the fall scene, I went through with oil paints and kind of touched it up a little bit. If you look at the background tree, that tree was one of my many green trees. But as most people have probably noticed, look at the color on the very tips of the leaves.
Mm-hmm.
The tree on the left.
That's kind of what I was talking about, Tom. Modeling right where that transition period right there is kind of what I'm looking at. Yeah.
And then the one back near the backdrop has kind of yellow on the ends.
Yeah.
And then the one on the right's all color. And then notice the leaves on top of the roof that have gathered there from the trees. And there's some mini prince pigeons.
Mourning doves or pigeons. Yeah, there you go.
Yes. Yeah, more mini prints there.
Unbelievable. Wow.
The leaves. I'm sure somebody's probably wondering, how do you attach the leaves? I sprinkled them on there. Well, first of all, I took a small brush and I did spread around some just straight Elmer's glue where I wanted the leaves to go, to give it a good base to bite the leaves, to the roof. Then I sprinkled on the leaf flake foliage, and that's from Scenic Express. It's called their leaf flake foliage, and it's just like flakes of leaves. They make them in all colors. Tom showed some photos of that, I believe, when he did his part. And then after I sprinkled them on top, this is where I used alcohol. I did not use glue and water and detergent, and I used a little syringe. And I just squirted a little bit of alcohol over the top of all those leaves to soak them up. And then I used the same syringe and then, got some glue and water, Elmer's glue and water, and then dribbled a little bit of that on top. And when it's dry, it's hard, it's solid, it will not go anywhere.
Yeah.
Wow.
Then I touched up along the edges. A lot of times when your leaves are sitting on the roof for a long time, it'll discolor the roofing a little bit right along the edges. You can see I took some oil paint and I kind of darkened the edges a little bit. And over here on this by the pigeons, you can see kind of a dark edge along the left side there. Yes.
Right here. It's where they start to decompose, right? Yeah. So you want to get that leaching of the color
out
of the leaves.
And I try to show a little variety in the color of the leaves. You're going to have some brighter colors laying on top from leaves that just fell, and then you're going to have a lot. Then you're going to have a lot of leaves that have been there for a while. They're going to be more of your browns, and they're not going to be as bright.
It's unbelievable.
It's insane.
It's outstanding. I absolutely love it.
Okay, we can. There's that's the summer scene, and you can see the mini prince chairs and things there. And there it is with the fall colors.
Wow.
Okay. We just move right along there. There you have the summer picture, and there you have the fall. I removed the tree that was over by the Kwanzaa hut because I thought it was covering up too much of the elevator, so I got rid of it.
Look at that. Now you see it, now you don't.
Yeah, and that's
I actually like it better without it.
Yeah, I do too. And see, that's one of those things that we talk about, about the artist's eye and composing a scene. And I kind of go around and I look at things and I go, this doesn't work. And sometimes I'll put something in there because I don't think it through as much as I should. And then once it's in there, and then next thing you know, I'm removing it. So, another little trick to look at your layout to see what the scenes look like. I've always learned, and I've always noticed a lot of artists when they're painting pictures and things, or if they're looking at something, they'll stand back and you'll notice them squint their eyes. And I'll stand back and look at my layout and kind of squint my eyes, and it forces me to kind of look at it overall and not pick out individual things. And that kind of helps a little bit in composing the scene.
That's the first Pepsi machine I've seen in any picture.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. The Pepsi cases and everything. And there's another Pepsi machine across the street down here to the front of the photo to the right, but I don't think you can see it in this. I don't think I shared any photos of that elevator except for one that's farther away.
Everything's been Coca-Cola so far. That's the first Pepsi.
Yeah, and I've got some 7-Up.
And there was one, was it Dr. Pepper or 7-Up by the grocery store, by the general store?
Yep. Okay, we can move on. We've seen plenty of this scene before. That's just kind of an in view with everything green. And you can see the screen door. I got that off of Google Images. And I put the Kent sign on there myself. and just kind of make it look like one of those little screens. There's a broom tucked back there and the feed bags with the Kent feet sides on them.
It's just look at the truck on the scale as well.
Yep. There's your stoplight again.
And there's a stoplight again.
There's your
moisture probes there. Wow.
Yeah, with the cable and lines coming off of it too. The Pepsi sign came from Google Images.
Jeez. Isn't that great?
The Farmer's Grain and Supply, I made that myself and kind of weathered it up.
Yeah.
And then I added that Pepsi on top of it. My interiors are photos too, basically. There's the same scene with the color.
This is cool. Now, did you pin some of the leaves up against the rails too?
Yes, I do have some of that in some areas. I'm a little careful with that because sometimes that could cause some issues with power contact from the wheels of your locomotive to the track. And I try to do that without necessarily interfering with the operation, because one thing I can't stand is watching a headlight flicker as the train goes down the track. And so I try to keep that stuff clear. Here's one of the other elevators. This is a photo that my daughter took, I believe, for Craftsman, which I don't think they use this one. And then the next one is the color.
Oh my. This is truly this is art. I don't know what to say about that. Other than that, this is great.
All in under 16 inches.
Yep.
Yeah. And one thing I wanted to emphasize again is it took me only 3 evenings to transform my layout from summer to fall. I spent about 5 hours each night, so about a total of 15 hours, and it was pretty much done. All I did after that was add a tree here and there every once in a while. If I would find some more trees online somewhere or whatever, if I would look at a spot and say, well, someday I'm going to put a tree in there, and if I get the tree, I put it in. But most of this was done in about 3 days.
3 days.
3 evenings. 3 evenings.
So your trees that have transitioned fully to a color, like the one on the left here and that some of the yellow ones.
Yes.
Do you use a different, like, do you blend the yellows and oranges together or reds and oranges together to kind of get the different colors? Or
no, a lot of these trees, a lot of the orangish colored one down the lower left, that's an MBR tree. Okay. Now the trees on the right hand side, there are some MBR trees mixed in there, but I don't waste anything. I've cut off lots of branches from MBR trees, especially if I use them as flats against the backdrop. I have to cut off about half the tree.
Wow.
pushed up against the backdrop. So what do I do with the pieces from the back? I save them and I just simply start stuffing them in. And that's where you're seeing a lot of that. A lot of that is just there's super trees that I made myself with the materials from Scenic Express that Tom Klimoski shared with you. And a lot of them are just leftover pieces from the MBR trees and things that I was able to stuff in here and there to bring out more color.
Wow.
And then a lot of those green trees, like I said, are painted on the ends.
Jeez.
Okay, next one will be the same thing, basically different cars, but in color.
Well, this really shows the power line.
Yeah, with the vines actually growing up the lines a little bit on this one. And you can see two of them kind of dangling straight down, as well as kind of taper out a little bit. A little more green in this photo.
Not totally fall just yet, right?
Right.
Tractor scene.
Yeah, we could just look at this as a summer scene and then go to the next one. Then you can see.
Jeez, come on!
Isn't that pretty?
So if you go back and forth, you can see the difference.
Look at that. And then
August, October.
Yeah.
We talked about the roads. We talked about the signs. A lot of them coming from Google Images and shaping them up a little bit in Photoshop. The tractors, the green Oliver is mini prints, and it is an awesome tractor for a 3D printed tractor. My God, I've seen some 3D stuff that just does not look great, and that thing is. I didn't do anything to it. I just
painted it.
Yeah. The Ford is from Artitech, a company in Europe. The smaller Ford Fortune tractor is Artitech. The tire lane on the ground is Mini Prints. The Farmall is Lifelike, which I think is Walther's Seamaster now, that I detailed. I added the headlights. I added the tin can on top of the exhaust, and the duals, the decals, and then the weathering.
That's remarkable.
If you look carefully behind the Oliver, there's a Pepsi machine.
Oh yeah, there it is.
And then farther down is probably the only machine on my layout that is a can machine. Wow. I chose DX because that's a brand name that you don't see a lot else, and it was a pretty prominent in Indiana in the 50s and 60s. So I figured, I've got to put DX on here to make this thing look real as I can get it, and not the usual gas signs that you might see in a lot of layout photos. Your cursor was right on it, right there. The orange tractor that is Artitech also. It's
Alice Chalmers, maybe.
No, it's a Massey Ferguson, I believe.
Oh, Massey Ferguson.
Yeah. And then the
Combine looks like a Massey too.
Yes, an old open one. And you got to remember, modeling in the late 70s, a lot of these mom and pop repair places, like this building, it looks like the building just moved. I mean, they started in the first brick building, and then they bought the second one and knocked a hole through the building, and then they used that. And then they went down and decided to add the gas station. So it's one whole thing now. And it's a mom and pop place in a small town. We had one just like this, Hawk's Garage, in a little town near my house up in Indiana. And you had all kinds of everything laid out in front. They were mostly Minneapolis Moline. Most of their stuff was mini Moline. But they had everything out there. Farm trucks, all kinds of makes of tractors, implements. But a lot of their stuff was old, and it was like antique. And they would buy this stuff and just throw it in the yard beside. And people would come by and want to buy it for parts.
Yeah.
When they're renovating some old equipment. So that's what I'm trying to show with all of the stuff just stashed in there. A lot of it is old. A lot of it's just there for parts. Some of it is there for sale. Somebody wants an old used tractor that they might want to run an auger to a combine with and not necessarily farm with it anymore.
Just for the PTO.
You John Deere fans, way to the back there is a John Deere back there.
Way back here?
Yeah, that's it right there.
Yeah.
I've got a manure spreader there, a tank, that silver tank for a manure. I've got a one of those rakes. You can barely see it above the front end of the combine. They're yellow. You can see the round rakes to rake up hay and stuff in the field. And just, different little things that you might find at a place like this.
Yeah. You got the shrubs growing up on the side of the building.
Yeah, those are Martin Welberg. Tom pointed those out.
Yeah.
I've got a cement block looking like the white is kind of washing off of it. I saw that on several buildings during many of my railfan trips. And then towards the bottom, I have a lot of that green, nasty, mossy color, from, the blocks being wet.
Yeah.
For so many years.
So start to finish, let's for Hawk's Garage here, putting this complex together, you build that on the workbench on a piece of masonite,
right?
And it's got a basically a border of about an inch around it all the way.
Correct.
You plop that in the layout, start to finish. How long did it take you to build this scene?
Well, I probably worked on that building, I'm guessing maybe three evenings. Spending quite a bit of time on them.
What?
I'll tell you what, guys, I move when I get onto something, I go crazy until it's done. But the first building where the Farmall tractor is, that's a Rick's building. Used to be the old Mike Stuff building. Okay, I cut it down so it wasn't as long. The middle block building is also Rick's. It's the second building that they make, a cement block. And then the third building down there, believe it or not, some of you are going to look at that and you're going to go, what? That is Al's Victory Service from Walthers. But you would never know it when you look at it.
No, you wouldn't.
I put a brand new wall on the front, a wooden wall over the two doors, the large doors. I put another wooden wall in front. And then if you were able to see the other side facing the grocery store, that's still the original wall. So I just made it look like, they rebuilt the front of the building sometime down the road because of repairs or just needed fixed up or whatever. So I just try to give it that small town look and not that typical, look that you would see, actually on a lot of layouts. That's, Jim Six, my old buddy from up in Indiana, we used to always say, we try to not make our buildings look like everybody else's, if that makes sense.
Yeah, right. Not everyone. You don't have the New River Mining Company from Walthers, on every layout.
Yeah.
Unbelievable. Okay.
Wow.
Okay.
Let's keep rolling here. Another picture.
A little bit faster now because a lot of these are just different angles and different views. I was happy with this picture.
This is really great.
I got the camera down on the layout, and I'm doing photo stacking now. There's a neat program. If anybody wants the program, there's a program called Camera Pixels that you use on your iPhone, and it'll bracket everything for you. It's real easy. You just hit photo bracket and how many you want in that bracket, 10, 15, 20 exposures. Put it on a tripod, hit the button, and it just takes all 20 of them right now. And then download them in your photo program and drag them over into Helicon Focus, hit render, and you're done.
That's it.
Yep.
Easy peasy. Yeah. That's a cool
I'm
scene.
done.
Now, where you're not done. You got to practice.
The older type silos and the bands around them.
I love that. That's the engine facility again.
Yeah, thought that pop. Yeah, this will probably, some of these photos will just have to be closer up details now. You can see the Coca-Cola billboard on the side underneath the tree there.
Jeez Louise.
That came from a company called Dave's Decals. Hashtag not sponsored.
Dave's Decals.
Dave's Decals. You probably seen that. He's got a lot of awesome decals that you could use to put on sides of buildings. I mean, that sign actually looked like that on the decal. I didn't have to weather it.
No.
I just put it on there and worked it down with Salvacet, and I did go over the top of it a little bit with dull coat and a little bit of dry brushing just to kind of blend it in a little bit better. But I mean, it pretty much looked like that on the decal sheet. Then you can see the air conditioner in the back there and the U.S. mail signs. A lot of my details also come from a company called I've drawn a blank now. Having a senior moment here. It'll come to me eventually.
I wouldn't mind having a few senior moments if they end up looking like this.
Right?
Showcase
miniatures.
Yes, they make some really awesome stuff now too. This just shows the road transition to the backdrop. I use oil paints and I paint the road and transition it into the backdrop. So
look at that. Now, I'm going to guess that this is the backdrop here and you added that texture to it, right?
It actually goes right on to the scenery part of the layout.
Yeah.
So it just extends up onto the backdrop.
Yeah, very good. Oh, pumpkins.
Yeah, more mini prints. A lot of times, we talk about seasonal details, and when you're modeling mid-October, you're going to have green trees with color tips or color from top down. You're going to have trees that are all color. You're going to have leaves along the edges of the roads, under trees, on rooftops. You're also going to see pumpkin displays. You're going to see wagons with pumpkins and with hay bales. You're going to see the corn stalk displays. And there are a lot of mini prints things in this picture. I mean, the pumpkins, the pigeons, the Indiredact chair, the feed trials or whatever those are in the back. A lot
stock
of
tanks.
All mini prints, yes.
Yeah, beautiful.
The bicycles. I don't use the Prizer bicycles or the Woodland Scenics bicycles. They're too oversized. Those are all they're I can't remember the name of the company. They're photo etched. I know that. They're all photo etched out of metal. So that's where you get the fine detail. I was able to bend the pedals out and bend the handlebars out, and that's pretty much it. And then paint them, put them on.
Tom, how often do you get back to Indiana to kind of recharge the battery a little bit?
I haven't been back since we moved here. It's been going on 4 years now, and I haven't been back. And I am not 100% sure we'll ever go back. I don't know if I really care to go back. We really like it down here. Our kids live down here. They're only about 10 minutes away.
I mean, just to visit like friends or somebody like that, like just been back like in the area, not
I've got some dear friends up there I left behind, and I think about them often. And I think there's probably going to be time we can get back and join them for dinner somewhere, and that kind of thing. But not really thinking much about it right now.
This is beautiful.
It is.
It takes a lot to render me speechless, man.
Trust me, I know.
Hey.
You can see the water hose on the ground there, and some little details that you couldn't see easily in some of the other photos.
With the garbage can here.
Yeah.
With the DX logo on it.
Yep. You see the tin can on top of the exhaust. Yeah. Now, if you zoom in real close, you can see individual oil cans sitting on the ground back there.
Back between the gas pump and the pop machine.
Up and one on its side.
This kind of reminds me of that scene from the movie The Jerk. He hates these cans.
I used evergreen styrene rod for that, real fine rod, painted it, and I took I used some decals, I think from Microscale. They had some of their gas station sign decal sets, but I don't think Microscale makes DX. I think those. I can't remember where I did those. I think they are decals. Yeah, I can't remember where I found them, but they are out there. I promise you that.
This is cool.
Yeah,
I just like on the tractor, how there was obviously some weathering done here to to the treads and on the tires to simulate that they're not just brand new tires, they've actually rolled once or twice. Yeah.
The gas pumps, again, the DX signs, everything on there is from Google Images. The face of the gas pumps I found on Google Images. I reduced them down and just glued them in that opening. Now those are showcase miniatures, and they do provide really nice decals.
So what tool did you use to reduce them down?
Photoshop. Yeah. There was another one I used to use. It was called Print Shop, but I don't like the new version of it. It doesn't do the job that the older ones do. So this is just a different angle. Got more train in there.
Yeah.
That's the other elevator. You could see the far left if you could zoom in on the scales there and everything. And you can see all the cables coming off of the probe for the moisture. There's cables going back inside, cables going down. Again, the stop and go sign. There is a nice view of a Pepsi machine for you.
There you go.
Oh yeah.
The Wayne feeds. Everything's Wayne feeds. Sometimes you see pictures where people will mix different signs, and you shouldn't do that. It's either all Wayne feeds, or it's all Kent, or it's all Purina Chow's. Now there is exceptions to that. Sometimes an elevator will change, and one example of that is in Lucerne, Indiana, where the elevator specialized in Hubbard feeds. Then they changed to Kent. So the Hubbard feed signs did not get removed right away. In fact, one of them was removed, but it was just leaning against the building on the ground. And then they had the Kent feeds. And I also, like on my Kent elevator, Kent feeds, I've got older Kent feed signs and newer Kent feed signs. And I also have the Wayne feeds on the side of the feed truck. I made that from scratch.
The truck?
Yeah, I had some parts from, I think
Okay.
called IMEX, IMEX or something like that. They had a double grain thing or something, and I was able to cut them off and attach them to the back end of a flatbed Athearn Ford truck. And then I used photos to add the auger where the truck will run down along a row of I don't know what you would want to call them, where you drop the feed in there for the cattle or the hogs to eat. And I've got this
like a trough.
Yeah, trough. There you go. That's the word I'm looking for.
Where you can put it in like a surge bin or a
yeah.
Bin.
Then you got the canvas on top there to roll over the top of it when it's full. And we got the lines coming down that run the auger and everything.
Hydraulics.
Yeah. It's not a perfect match to everything, but it's one of those things where it does the job. It's good enough.
Yeah. And then look at the scale detail. You got the oil drippings from where the trucks park, and it's right where it should be, because they're going to be stopped, getting probed, and then that's where they're going to leak out.
Okay, we can move on here, and we should hope. What number are we on now?
44.
Okay, this next one is the one I want. Okay, we could bypass that. I mean, that just shows more fall colors. Okay, here is the last one. I just wanted to point out how people ask me, how do you transition your layout scenery to the photo? I use, like I said, I use oils. I weather the roads, and then I weather the roads on the photograph a little bit to kind of get them to blend together. Then you can see all of the leaves that are laying on the road. And yes, in this photo, I did attach some individual leaves in the middle of the road. And then you got your leaves along the edges. But then I painted the leaves on the photograph to match the color of the leaves that are on the front. Now, if you zoom in a lot closer, I don't know if anybody would be able to tell where the transition is. I don't know if you can tell where the model ends in the photograph.
Oh, come on.
But see all
here.
the black. Yes, it's the sign. The sign, the yellow sign, is almost right on the backdrop. But notice that the road in the backdrop has all kinds of little black speckles on it, just like the texture of the road that I modeled.
Yes.
Okay. One of the things I noticed a lot of times, especially with gravel roads, is you can blend the road into the backdrop with colors, but you will oftentimes be missing that texture.
Yes.
So how did I do that? I used my airbrush. I turned the pressure way down. I didn't push down on the button on top real hard, and I spattered. And I used a color that is kind of a dirty brown color because I didn't want it to really stand out a whole lot. I wanted it to be kind of subtle. So I just kind of went through and I just lightly spattered the airbrush, and I got that pepper effect.
Yeah.
If you turn down your airbrush really low and then just barely hit that button, you could get that spatter effect. Now, I would recommend that before somebody try that, practice so you kind of get the feel of it.
Practice.
And I also went back over it a little bit more with a real fine point felt tip pen. And I just went through and I just started dotting it to kind of blend it in just a little bit more.
Wow. I love the perspective, how the road winds away.
Yeah.
And goes into like a canopy of trees, and then you just see it come through the other side. That's fantastic.
Now, this photo is from my old layout. This is the old Logansport in Indiana Northern. And by the way, for anybody that wonders, my whole layout from up in Indiana lives on.
Really?
A friend of mine, Tommy Foltz. I don't know if he's on or listening tonight. He's probably on a train. He's a CSX engineer. He was able to come down to my house in Indiana and just cut everything off the wall. He took the backdrop and everything.
Oh, wow.
And then hauled it all home on a flatbed trailer and also in the back of his truck. And he's inserting it into his much larger layout. And I mean, huge layout.
Really?
And he is a really good modeler. You're going to be hearing from him down the road. He's very private, doesn't want to share a whole lot right now until he's ready. And when he's ready, then you'll see more of what he's doing. But he's inserting my old layout into his layout, and he transitioned all of my, short line, branch line looking track into mainline track. And it's going to look really good. And I got a completely remodeled basement out of the deal. Plus some cash to help me get started down here. But, my basement looked really nice when he was done, and it helped sell the house. So I'm very thankful to everything that he did for me in exchange for the layout. So great guy. Flies Huey helicopters for any of you guys that are.
Hueys?
Yep.
Outstanding. So, okay. Thank you, Tom.
Yes.
That was incredible. And thank you for sharing all the techniques too. I mean, that's 90% of the battle, right? And helping us all learn. And I can say I appreciate that. This is a podcast that I'm going to come back and watch over and over again when I start doing more scenery behind me, so I can start, applying a lot of these techniques. So, Mike, what do you think about all of this?
My head's about to explode.
Yep.
I've got too much information and
information overload, right?
Yeah, information overload, and it's just, everybody, you didn't get to there overnight, right, Tom? I mean, that wasn't anything.
No.
I mean, like I said, from you look at the 85 layout, you look at what you're doing now, and it's night and day, right?
I tell people that there's always one or two people out there that'll want to, they give me all of these kudos, accolades, all that, and I tell them, look, I'm no special than anybody else. I'm nothing special, and I keep telling people that. I was at a point where I had to learn all this stuff too. I learned over the years. I saw what other people were doing. I memorized all that stuff up here. I read the magazines, and I'm like I'm sure all of you guys have. And the art background does help. Yes. I'm able to kind of sometimes just lay in bed at night. I can't get to sleep, and I just start dreaming up these things, oh, maybe this is how I can do this detail, or I could try this. And then the next day I come in here or up in Indiana, I go downstairs and I try it out and see if it works. So a lot of it's just trial and error. A lot of it's learning over the years. I didn't get all this stuff at one time either. And I'm just thankful to a lot of the other modelers out there who inspired me and who got me going in the direction that I'm going right now. I could name a bunch of them. I won't do that because I don't want to. I tell Tom, I said, I'm always afraid to open my mouth because I'm always afraid I'm going to say something wrong. That's been a lifelong thing with me. A lot of times it seems like, I'll say something and it comes out the wrong way. And then the next thing I know, somebody's getting after me because they think that I'm criticizing or doing this or doing that. And that is not what I'm doing. Just sometimes I'll say things I mean well, but they might not come out that way. So I'm always afraid to say something, and I'm always afraid to mention names because I don't want to leave any friends out. But there are a lot of them out there, and there are some that you guys have never heard of. There is a guy in Michigan, Maynard Mitchell. The guy is amazing. Oh man, if you could just see his scenery backdrop transition, they will blow your mind away. Maynard Mitchell, remember that name? We call him Mitch, and he's an older fellow. I think he's in his late 70s right now, pushing 80, but he's still going strong. His scenery is just amazing, and I learned a lot from Jim Six. Jim and I kind of feed off of each other. He's learned from me. I've learned from him. That's the other thing. I think we all feed off of each other.
Yeah,
for
sure.
Yeah.
So I wanted to, before we tie down for tonight here, I did want to give the section crew out in the chat just another last opportunity to get some questions in for Tom and Tom. And again, there's been a lot of great questions tonight, a lot of information being passed along, and a lot of inspiration being passed along as well. But I did have like a question for Tom and Tom, and we'll go to Tom Klimoski first. So just to talking about scenery and all the techniques that we talked about this evening, if you could impart one piece of advice to the section crew on doing scenery, what would you leave our audience with? One thing.
Probably static grass is probably one of the biggest changes to the hobby that I've seen. I mean, on my old layout in Miami, I had the typical scenery, and I started trying this wild fibergrass, and it just made a huge difference. So if you're not using static grass, start looking at that and start experimenting either with the machine or with like the ones that I use, the wild fibergrass, and you'll see a huge improvement in your layout right there. And then the other part is don't be afraid to try new things, experiment.
Yeah.
You're not going to get it on the first attempt. You're not going to get it on the second attempt. It takes 2 or 3 attempts, kind of like with my water. Didn't come out the first time, but it looks better the second and the third. And you just keep trying things, and don't be afraid to fail.
Yeah.
I would agree with that. It's just like when I weather a covered hopper, for example. If it's coming out really yucky, a lot of times you would think, well, it's done. I'm going to wall bash this thing and we're out of here. Okay.
Wall bash.
Now,
that's a reference back to the first podcast you were on.
Yeah. I stay with it. I don't think there's ever a mistake. You can always do something to cover up a mistake. So like Tom says, don't be afraid to try things. If you're not happy with how something turned out, keep working at it. Go over it again. Do whatever it takes to get it to where you want it. The static grass thing, that is one of the biggest things. The static grass mats. For smaller layouts like what Tom and I have, the mats work great because you could stretch those things out and cover huge areas of scenery in very little time. I mean, you could have a layout look like it's almost finished scenery wise in just a few days with those static grass mats, and learn to work with them. Don't just put the static grass down and be done. Think creatively. When you go out and see fields of grass, what do you see out there? I keep a container of a Woodland Scenics fine blended turf in either green or the earth tone. And once I spread the glue and water on my surface, and then I attach the static grass mats into that glue and water, I'll sprinkle on the green stuff and then I'll take a brush and kind of brush it down and work it down in the grass into that glue. Okay. But then I'll spray the top of the grass with maximum hold hairspray, and I'll sprinkle that fine turf over the top of the grass to make it look like there's little blades of leaves and stuff. I'll sprinkle on some leaf flake foliage. I will sprinkle on some flower, the little leaf flake things that look like flowers. And I'll sprinkle flowers here and there out in a field to represent wildflowers. You could sprinkle on little bits and pieces of super trees, little pieces that are left over for sticks and branches and stuff laying around out there. There's all kinds of stuff that you can mix in that static grass. And then once you get it all in there, go over it again with another coat of maximum hold hairspray. And when it's dry, it's stiff and it ain't going anywhere. I can go over my layout with a sweeper and to get the dust off of it. And unless I've got that sweeper tip right down on the grass, it doesn't suck anything up. And even then it doesn't really suck it up. If you want to vary the topography a little bit and you've got a narrow layout like mine, where you really don't have a lot of room to do a lot of the styrofoam and the different variations, because I'm just modeling basically along the right of way, I stack static grass mats on top of each other, and that raises it up. So, there's a lot of neat things you can do with static grass, Martin Welberg bushes, all of the neat leaf flake foliage and the fine turf material that's out there. Just, my advice is always just go through Scenic Express and just look through everything.
Yep. I agree.
You'd be amazed.
Mike, what do you think?
I got bad news for you, Mike. I got bad news for you. As good as Tom's photos look, it looks even better in person. I had the opportunity to go to Tom's layout, and like you said, your eyes just fall out. I mean, I was looking for hours and hours and hours. It's still finding more details, finding more stuff. There's no magic done in the photos. What you see in those photos is what's on his layout, and it even looks better in person.
That can't be said all the time. Down there. I already threatened them.
Threatened.
When you're ever down here, you're always welcome. Just give me. I mean, we're normally around every day somewhere. I mean, so we could always be around. So.
Yeah. And the other part is we operated on his layout. So his layout does oprate. It's not just a static, beautiful artwork. It's our artwork that operates. And we had a blast. I just picked up 4 cars from a couple of different of the industries and set them out on the interchange track. That took about an hour.
Yeah.
It was a blast. I mean, we had a great time. It was a wonderful day, and Tom was a great host, and I can't thank him enough for allowing me to come over and operate, and we had a great time, man. It's a real fun layout, and it just proves again back to some of the other podcasts that you don't need to have a huge room, a huge layout to have fun, to enjoy the hobby. Look at the amazing job that Tom's done on his layout. I mean, it's just fantastic, and that's part of that is because he can focus on that because it's a smaller layout. If you were trying to do that for a Basement Empire, Tom, you probably take you 2 nights as opposed to 1 night, but
yeah. Ralph. I do have some Easter eggs hidden there, but I have some pheasants actually from Scenic Express that I have in one area. I didn't show any pictures of that tonight, but yeah, I have a lot of those little teeny tiny little nuggets here and there that if you look around, you'll find them. And like Tom was saying, my layout's so small. I make up for it by adding all of the detail. You could go into one of these huge model railroads and it could take you an hour or more to go up and down all the aisles and soak it all in. I don't have that. So I've got to do something different since it's so small. So I make up for that by adding all the detail and all of the eye candy, so to speak, without overdoing it. I mean, I don't think I've overdone anything. I mean, I try not.
Oh no!
I try not to get to the cartoonish type, stuff. But when somebody comes in, like Tom, or like my good friend Robin Mountainay, I mean, they spent like well over an hour looking at the layout. I mean, just the little layout. If you really look at everything, you could spend a good hour looking at the whole thing. But somebody might wonder how many cars do I have in my layout at one time? Probably about 10 cars maximum. I could have up to 12. I spot 3 to 4 at one elevator, 2 to 3 at the second elevator, 2 at the third elevator, 1 or 2 cars at the fertilizer facility, a tank car where the liquid fertilizer and anhydrous is. And I've got a couple of spots where I can just spot a box car for whatever. My elevators have a couple of spots where I can spot old 40-foot box cars,
right,
or that were relegated to just feed bags of fertilizer or feed and seed, and that's it. So I have quite a few cars moving on my layout at one time, where I could have quite a minimal amount of cars, depending on what I want to do and what kind of time I want to spend on it.
So we're getting some lightning round questions here from the section crews. So Tom Johnson, what's the length of your 16-inch layout?
30 feet.
30 feet.
It's a U shape.
So it basically wraps around the perimeter of this room, correct?
Yeah. If you go to my blog on MRH, they call it a journal now. Joe Fugate changed that name, but I've got a track plan there that is a photo track plan that Scott Thornton, that I think we all know, put together for me. I got up on a step ladder and I put the phone right up against my ceiling, and I took photos of my layout on all 3 sides, and then I sent him the photos and he put them together for me. But it was still in the summertime thing, and I did make a couple of changes with grain bends since that photo was taken. But it's still, you'll get a feel of what the layout is like. I only have 6 switches total. Did I get that?
6 switches.
6 switches total. Yes.
So, question for Tom Klimoski then. So, you're the same question for you. Ultimately, your layout wraps around the perimeter of your room, and then you have a bit of a peninsula. So, roughly, how long of a run do you have with yours?
I think I measured it out. Let's see. about maybe 40, 45 feet at the most.
Yeah, I was gonna say, you got
That's to the end of the peninsula over here, and from staging. So it's a little bit longer than Tom's because it's a G shape. Tom's is a U. Mine comes around and then comes out. But you don't really run ever from one end of the layout to the other. You're always stopping in the yard or coming from the yard out. That kind of stuff.
Yeah,
and then your layout goes from the yard is like their central location. You go out one way to one spot and then around into the peninsula from the other way, correct? Or am I?
Well, I have a staging yard which represents one yard, and then the yard that you see over here, this is Tate, so that's kind of in the middle of the layout, if you will, and then you come around to the peninsula on this side, for one of the switch jobs. So kind of splits.
See, I just have one interchange track to the back wall, and I'm not fortunate to have a room next door that I could burrow a hole through the wall. Have a staging or something like a friend of mine that lives nearby here. It's one of your friends, Tom, that lives over by Melbourne or whatever, where he's got a staging in another room. During the days that I do not operate, I have to, remove the cars and put them on with my hands, and you can see in the background here all of those trays. That's where all of my cars are. Those trays are full of covered hoppers and different cars, and I just stage it that way on days that I don't operate. And, that might change. Now, if you could see in the background behind me where the layout ends there at the door, I could always use the 2 tracks by that elevator. And the second track could also be used as an interchange because my layout is kind of in between kind of a Y. There's an interchange over here, there's an interchange over here. So I could extend a cassette or something off of that to the back wall and perhaps add a little bit more to the operation. So there's little things I'm thinking about that I could always do later. Or I could build another layout underneath. I could take those cabinets and put them somewhere else and build an L-shaped layout, another section. So I'm just modeling a one-town layout, Tom's modeling more of a larger area in the same size of room. I'm just modeling the north side of Logansport in just a large switching area that Conrail abandoned, and so the county of Cass kind of took over in the elevators and stuff, and all of the short lines that were forming back in the late 70s. And this Cass County Railroad was formed to serve all of the grain elevators and other industries in and around Logansport. So my layout's just a small portion of the Cass County. There's a lot more to Cass County that's not being modeled. It's just in my history or my write-up, or so to speak. And I cover that a little bit in my journal too. And I think I included some maps of some of the other trackage that I actually don't model. But sometime I might model another district or another spur or another area of Logansport down below. That's always a possibility too. Somebody asked if I had lights on my layout. No, I don't light anything up in my layout. I don't mess with any of that.
What are the heights of your guys' layouts?
60
inches.
What about 54.
54.
Oh, so pretty close to the same. Pretty similar, actually. Yeah. Really not very far off at all, really.
I like 60 because I could stand and get a really neat, realistic view of the railroad. I'm not eye level. I'm looking down on it a little bit, but it's just a really neat view.
Yeah.
It's high enough where if I have visitors here with little children that tend to not keep their hands off of things, they can't reach it.
Yeah.
My dog can't get up on it. That's another good thing.
There we go.
She's 70 pounds now and only 8 months old. So,
Ooh. You got your hands full there.
She's a Bernie doodle.
Yeah, outstanding. So, I guess, Mike, any final comments for the crew here?
Well, first of all, just thank you for coming on. That's it's you guys blow us away every time you show up. I mean, it's just there's never anything that you haven't shown us that hasn't inspired somebody to redo, myself included. I mean, I'm at a point now with my layout where my track is done, my Now I'm going and doing scene by scene, and all this gives me is just nothing but a bunch of ideas. And now I'm going to have to go and look at the layout.
Now your layout
stand there and
layout too, correct?
What's that?
Your layout's going to be kind of like ours, a small, simple layout. You're not going to have a lot of switches or.
Yeah, I have a total on my. Well, I've only got half of the layout built, maybe. But right now I have 1, 2, 5 or 6 switches on mine, but mine is I model in S scale, and my layout's 11.5 inches wide.
Oh wow! So
yeah,
you're narrower than mine, and you're modeling a bigger scale.
Yes.
Wow.
Yeah. So
that's it. I like hearing that. I like to hear when people that are narrowing up their layouts and not modeling these deep scenes that I don't think is necessary. It's just a waste of space and a waste of money and a waste of scenery, really.
Yeah, I'm looking at I'm really looking at the scenic value of it. I want people to walk into my layout at one point, and I'm sure you guys feel the same way. I want somebody to look at it and say, "Oh, I remember seeing that at one point." So I'm trying to take kind of like what you did, Tom, is take things from memory. And I'm modeling like back when I like right around 1992, 1989 to 92 area, and when I first started on the railroad, and with my Farland terminal, it's a fictional layout, just a little branch off of the Green Bay and Western is what it's going to be now. So, but it's one of those things where I want the scenery I want people to be involved in the railroad, not just the trains.
Yeah. I see Andy's railroad behind him, and I see you're into the narrow shelves pretty much too.
Yeah. The scenes that I have behind me here are between 12 and 14 inches deep.
Yeah, that's perfect.
Yeah.
Well, 2 feet. I still think even 2 feet wide is good. I don't have a problem with that or anything. But something that's like 3 or 4 feet deep where you can't reach to the backside, that sometimes could be a problem.
Yeah, especially if you have a valance or something like that. That's head scraping territory.
We got
ask me how I know.
We have a friend of ours that is Luke Lemons, who models 2 different railroads, but the only reason he does that is because one of them is only 70 feet away from the other. He says, "How do you do one without the other?" But in those areas, his aisles are really wide, but then he goes real narrow at certain spots too.
Yeah.
And his layout is huge. But I have fallen in love with the shelf layout, and I've really, really fallen in love with starting to do scenery.
Yeah.
And this just fuels the fire. That's all it does.
Yeah,
I just want to say thank you to both of you guys for coming on and showing. Now I got to put a river in, and now I got to turn.
I got the pond behind me here, the bog ready to go in. So.
Yeah, the bog. Yep, you're going to have the bog.
Yeah, so
I don't have any water on this layout. So
yeah, so I just I just want to wrap things up here. Tom, thank you so much for coming on, and the presentation this evening was invaluable. It was, I mean, seriously, it was inspiration and tons of content that people are going to be able to take away. So thank you for sharing that with us and the audience. That really kind of continues to propel this hobby forward when people share like this and help them achieve their Norman Rockwell painting type layout. So I do have a couple show notes here. So our next show will be in 2 weeks on the 31st of January. We're going to be having William Sampson on from Sue the Milwaukee Road. And we're going to have a bit of a theme here. He's going to be talking about model details and diving in on how to super detail all of the cars and the locomotives and the automobiles and the buildings, and kind of playing off of what Tom talked about this evening. So going to have a little theme this month in January called details. So look forward to that in a couple of weeks. If you're looking to join the Second Section podcast community, we do have a Facebook group. Entry is easy. You just got to answer 3 questions. We'll get you in there. And then if you like what we're doing, there's no greater way to support the podcast than giving the show tonight a like. And if you're not a subscriber, subscribing to the channel, it's free and it helps us, helps Mike and I keep the podcast rolling. So, again, thank you so very much, Tom, for your time and your efforts.
Yeah, absolutely.
It was fantastic. And, I'll get out all of your information in the show notes, going forward. So we all know where to get you on Tom's, blog on MRH, and then, Tom Klimoski's website and YouTube channel. So I think it pretty much sums it up as this was a fantastic show. And again, thanks to the section crew, 100 of us still hanging in there till the very bitter end here. So very, very good showing from the section crew. So thank you. So I guess from the second section, have a good night, and we'll see you in a couple of weeks. Good night, everyone.
Buddy.